Shane, what
Yeah.
how's the start of your day going? How you doing?
My day? Well, my day was mostly spent working. I did treat myself to some cold brew. You're mentioning coffee.
Does
I
cold brew
splurged
make
for
you
that.
shake? Like some people, it like makes them all jittery.
It
Is it?
does.
Do you like it?
It depends on how many conversations I plan on having through the day. Sometimes I need
Good thing we're
need to get
not
a little.
planning on having a conversation right now.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, it's a good day. Mostly just spent working. I had an hour long conversation about 2 seconds of animation today related to American Dad. That was it's typically how it goes. You have these long, drawn out conversations about the intricacies of something that only lasts on the screen for a moment.
Damn, motion nerds.
That's
Yeah, that's
crazy.
I
it's
love it.
truly, it's
I love it.
truly, yeah. It was about. I mean, I can't say much about the context of the
Classified.
episode.
This is like some government secrets kind of
Well, it's
spy
just
shit.
it's just American Dad. It just hasn't aired yet, but it was mostly just about a character walking backwards and how the steps weren't quite heel to toe and didn't line up with the upper body performance of the dialogue, and like how to approach, getting that all in sync and have it be truly animatable.
Wow. That's like, I feel like that's the kind of stuff as like board artists, like we don't really think about that stuff a ton. Like I know for me, I'm just kind of like, I'll just draw the pictures and that we sort of time it ish in an animated in an animatic kind of format, but I've never really thought like,
What kind of problems are we setting you guys up for
yeah.
Yeah,
when
exactly.
after
Well,
after we do what we do?
it is kind of actually interestingly, like walking and talking is kind of like a big issue for a lot of people because
Yeah.
they'll start with the upper body acting. They'll take a line of dialogue, they'll break it down into like my theory is every time there's a change of idea, there should be a change of shape. So in a single line of dialogue, whether it's like a prepositional phrase or a clause, it almost always deserves a change of shape. Anytime you're changing the subject, it deserves something. And so, a lot of board artists will go through and they will do the upper body acting of a line of dialogue, and then they'll try to plot the steps going forward. But what they'll end up accidentally doing is they'll just kind of plot step by step by step. So even if they think the steps work, the upper body acting no longer works because then you're having a character walk on 60 frame steps in order to hit those acting poses for the upper body.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's
Yeah.
why you cut closer to your character so you don't have to animate the legs.
Well,
I don't know.
on personal projects, yeah.
That's the thing. I don't
It's
know.
very-
I come from
Yeah.
like a super like economical type of background because in France there's like there was no timers in France because
Right.
yeah, because it's just like everything's done overseas, like all the timing's done overseas. So yeah, we definitely have to think the almost UPA type of storyboard. Yeah, because it's very like yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it can get pretty. Yeah, I mean, it can get down to like whether something's on ones or twos. If you have a background panning on ones, but a character walking on twos, you're going to get some jitter. And so it's,
Yeah.
with any kind of camera movement. So it's like, which I think it looks cool sometimes, but depending on the style of the show, you need to be aware of all that craziness.
That's really I think that's really cool. So you've been how long have you been working in animation by now? Because you've had a couple of shows under your belt.
Yeah, well, I've worked on probably 5 shows, I think. I've been in the industry for about 7 years. I'm on my sixth season of American Dad, which seems crazy to me because I remember I
Whoa.
kind of grew up watching it, and now I've been on the show for like a third of its existence. It's like, oh my god.
That's so crazy. Has it changed your viewing experience of the show?
Yes, yes. Watching it is now work. It is like, oh man, yeah. It's been crazy. And what's interesting is that only a few years of it was in-house because then COVID happened and then everything has been remote, pretty much remote ever since. So it's like the bulk of my animation experience is becoming remote as time goes on.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I feel that. I feel like because I think how long have you worked in animation, Sean, before the pandemic?
How long did I've been working in the animation industry since 2013. So
Okay.
quite a bit before the pandemic happened. I mean, yeah, the pandemic still changed everything regardless of, I mean, like it's kind of like a new industry now.
Yeah.
It's different. It's so much different than it used
I
to be.
feel I feel bad. Like people asking for advice, I'm like, I don't have advice for how to break in anymore because mine was so circumstantial and based on human contact. It's like,
Yeah. It used to be like, oh, I just walk right up to Titmouse and ask if I can get a tour, and I just sign up. I camp out front of the building until they let me in, and they give me an internship right on the spot. But now, if you run up, they'll spray you with bear mace.
yeah,
I think
yeah, especially without a mask.
I cheated a little bit because I know how you got into the animation industry, Shane, because I listened to your little video on your Kickstarter, which I thought was really, really cool. Actually, the reason why I got really excited about getting you on the podcast is because I listened to your intro video on your Kickstarter and I was like, this is so cool. This is such an interesting path into animation. I have never heard anyone from our generation, because I feel like our generation
Right.
is a lot of like, oh, I posted on social media and eventually I got a job.
Yeah.
But for you it's like so different, and I kind of want you to kind of like give us how you, because the video on Kickstarter is a little long, but like, and maybe there's some details that you want to edit out for this version, but I'd love to for you to like tell us how you got in. Hey, welcome to Creative Block. We're your hosts, V.
And I'm Sean. We interview people in the creative industries about their life, work, and hobbies while we doodle jam.
We ask people on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and Patreon. We also have a Discord. Just check us out on all these platforms if they had specific topics they wanted us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts.
Today we have with us the timing supervisor on American Dad, creator of Chew Gum series, Shane Curry.
Hi!
Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So how I came to like know about your series is because actually you followed me on Twitter and I was like, oh, this is like, I like this little icon. So hey, profile picture goes a long way. And I was like,
that's okay.
I'm curious about this person. And then I saw you had your Kickstarter pinned. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm interested to see kind of what that is like. And then I watched the video and I was like, this is so cool. This is such a cool story. And I've ever since I watched that video, I was like, that would be a cool thing to get Shane on Creative Block. And by the way, anyone who's listening right now, Shane's Kickstarter is still running, so if you want to check it out.
Yeah, it won't be by the time the podcast version airs.
Yeah,
but...
it's just right now,
yes.
But people are listening live, so
yeah, it's very cool.
And as we were talking about a little bit earlier, how you entered animation and how that's a cool story, because I'm always kind of like excited to talk to people who have an unconventional path in animation. And so yeah, and we were talking about how it could have only happened before the pandemic.
Yes.
Yeah, you essentially ran into someone on your like a lunch break, right? like that's sort of how it started, right?
Yes, the very truncated version of it was I was dating a girl who got a job as a secretary at a law firm at a building that shared a smoking space with like the surrounding buildings. And I would visit her on her lunch break and we would smoke together. I would visit her, but it turned out that one of the other buildings just happened to be Fox Animation. And so all of the other people out there smoking were animators. And I had no interest in becoming an animator. Really, I was trying to become a songwriter, but I had been teaching myself animation and animation software for a long time in order to make music videos. And so, I was hanging out with all of these animators and I was showing them animations that I was working on, not with the intention of trying to like break in or anything, but just purely because I was having fun and I was trying to write songs. And, just forming friendships, genuine friendships around that was sort of my foot in the door.
That's so cool. I love that I didn't know that you were already working on your own little animation. So I didn't know that you already had that going. Cause I feel like, from the video on the Kickstarter, I thought you were just kind of like, shooting the shit and you're like, that the conversation sparked the interest, but that was something that was happening already prior to meeting people.
Yeah. So as a songwriter, I've always tried to study other forms of medium just to kind of like get them to influence my work. Like I've read every songwriting book imaginable. So then I started writing books on story structure and writing. And I found this lecture of DVD, like these DVDs, these lectures from Richard Williams. It was basically the animator's survival kit, these DVD lectures. And there was just something fascinating about it. So even though I had no intention of being an animator, I found these lectures super fascinating. So I would just like watch them on repeat anytime I was bored, something in the background, and just kind of soak that in until I finally was like, well, what if I made an animated music video? And it was specifically the lip sync that I was doing that drew the attention of one of the animators. And he's like, this is a real job in the industry. Lip assignment itself is, as well as timing. I could probably teach you well enough to where you could probably earn enough money to survive as an animator. And I was like, holy crap. Yeah, let's do it.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I think that like even though the pandemic is a thing and that the landscape changed, I think one thing that kind of rings true from that experience, even to this one, is that you put yourself out there and forged either friendships or connections through things that you were making, whether it's on this sort of smoking break or even just by you followed V and you put your story out there, and these genuine sort of relationships form from this thing that you make and you care about and you're genuine about.
That's a really good point. I never really thought about that. Yeah, I think vulnerability is like the first step towards connection for sure. Because if you come across as false, then people are going to pick up on it right away.
I think that's so true. I feel like it's so hard to be vulnerable to, like, in general, like, like, I don't know, because putting yourself out there, like, obviously you run the risk of, like, rejection, I guess, and that's kind of scary. Yeah, I think what's cool too is that timing is, like I've only met a timer once, and I think that was at Cartoon Network, and it was someone from a previous, like an older generation. So
right.
I don't know
there's not many millennial timers. There's more now, but when I started, I was the only one that I had heard of. And I went to like timers union meetings, and I'm looking around, I'm like, oh my gosh, do I really belong here? There's serious
are all your
imposter
friends
syndrome.
old now? Are all your friends like really old men?
Well, some of them are retired. Some of them some of the people I worked under, they're retired, and yeah, it's pretty wild.
That's what's so interesting is like all of our crafts are so separated in a way because of the pipeline.
Yes.
Because timing comes in like so late in the pipeline, right? It's like, I don't know if you do you ever hang out with the crews? Have you ever been in a situation where you could just kind of like go and talk to board artists?
Well, yeah, when you're a timing director on a series, if you're in-house, you go to the director if you need fixes or if something's wrong. Because, part of the job of the timing director is to make sure that what is there can actually be animated. There's a lot of times where an animatic can look gorgeous and convey an emotion, but then when you sit down to try to animate it, you're like, oh, these feet are swapped, the hands switch whatever they're holding. There's some hookup issues where a character is missing from one scene or has a different expression in the next. And so there's lots of little things where you're like, okay, we can't animate that. So you have to go back and get it fixed. And so that's like the real job. But if you're working freelance, which is how I started freelance. So I started out working alone, which is kind of interesting because during the pandemic, I was like, oh, this is how I started in the industry.
You've been training for the pandemic this whole time.
Yes, exactly. And it was a long time of just sitting in my studio apartment alone, being like, I'm an animator. This is amazing. I'm getting paid for this and surviving. I'm alone, but I'm surviving. Yeah, and then right back to it just a few years later.
That's so crazy. Yeah, that's so crazy. How did it feel? Was it a little bit of a bummer, or were you like, I'm used to it?
I was always, because I entered the industry working on my own projects and working on my own songs and my own cartoons, I had to take a break from that just to learn the craft of timing because it's such a difficult skill to learn that once I got good enough at timing to where I could actually have personal projects again, I was okay with going back to being alone because I enjoyed making cartoons. But I was always impatient, so I took it was like right before the pandemic hit that I started messing with Blender. And it was like Blender 2.7, which is way, way old. But I just kept getting further and further into CG. And I think it was The Mandalorian came out in the middle of the pandemic, right? It was, and then they referenced something about using Unreal Engine for their backgrounds. And I thought that got me. And I was like, oh, Unreal Engine is free. So I downloaded and installed that. And then I started trying to combine Blender and Unreal Engine, all learning from YouTube videos, but with the extra free time from not commuting.
Dude, that's so cool because I feel like I just learned Blender, and then literally when I learned Blender, that's kind of when Unreal became more of a talking point in the industry. Like I feel like now Unreal is really starting to be a thing, and I'm just like, oh man, like it sounds so daunting. And like, how was your process?
Oh no, it is.
Yeah, how did you learn these softwares? Like, what's your angle? How did you kind of sign yourself do you follow tutorials, or how do you? Yeah.
Yes, I do. And I took my approach because I taught myself. So I'm like a self-taught animator. I didn't go to college at all. I was always just kind of like a worker. So anytime I wanted to do something, whether it was music or anything, I would just go online, research, buy books, figure out how to do it, and just do it. With Blender, it was a little more difficult because back in 2018, 2019, there wasn't anywhere near the amount of tutorials there are now. And so, I would sign up for Patreons to get people who are get inside the heads of people who are super talented. And I would try to find as many resources as I could. There was it's so funny because everything I learned about rigging a character, I learned from a Canadian animator who had a Patreon, and he was so cool. I think his channel is called Pixel Level Pixel or Level Pixel Level. But either way, if you go to his page right now, even though the videos are a couple of years old, he goes over the basics, the fundamentals of rigging. And so I always made the focus of making a cartoon my end goal. So I limited the stuff I was allowing myself to learn, narrowing that focus to just what pertains to animation, which started with moving blocks and cameras, like really getting comfortable with cameras. Because if you can be good with a camera in 3D, you can I'm fine with talking heads. I'm fine with a character standing still, as long as like the shots are nice, the composition is nice, So that was my main focus, was just sort of starting, and being a timing director, my job has always been to focus down to the frame of camera moves, cross dissolves, how things need to actually be animated, like what steps need to work, what can be cheated when sending it overseas and what can't. And when you're making those tiny adjustments to a camera move by just writing it on a sheet of paper, you need to know this stuff in your head. So sometimes I was just using Blender as a way to progress my skill level. Because it's one thing to be like, oh, you know what, this camera move, this truck in should be 4 frames instead of 6. It's like, is that too tight? Is that too quick? Just set it up in Blender. See what it looks like in Blender. You instantly know.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it's really interesting to talk about 3D cameras because I when I worked on Wings of Fire, we were storyboarding in Blender, and at first I was just kind of like, do we really have to storyboard in Blender? Can't we just kind of like just draw it? But it's true that once you have your assets and you have a camera in 3D, you like there are some shots that would be very, very, very hard to get correctly in 3D. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, there's some shots that can only exist in 3D, especially animated camera moves. Those are really painful. And, there's another big kind of like side issue with board artists is doing impossible camera moves on a traditionally animated show. It's like, hey, please don't animate the camera. Like, we can only cheat so much, so we can't.
Yeah, that's a pet peeve of mine too.
Oh, really?
Because I come from I come from making shorts from soup to nuts, like just from
Right.
scratch, just me.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
that I storyboard, I need to know how to animate also. And
Yeah, yeah.
so whenever I plan a camera move, I'm planning the whole pan, whether it's like a distorted banana pan or whether I do a trick where like I zoom in and have someone wipe the camera to switch the background out behind them, like things like
Right.
that are like to make camera pans possible. But sometimes
Hmm.
people are like, we're gonna have an animated background that's drawn frame by frame right here, and it's like, oh, okay, like gotta be careful about that. Like I hope that there's not that much going on around them.
Oh,
You know.
yeah. I love stepping through those frame by frame, especially the ones from the '90s. I saw one from Dilbert where they just, in order to make it happen in the Dilbert cartoon, they'd put it on like threes, and it looks so like chunky and out of place, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And sometimes I like that. I mean, like I
Yeah,
do
yeah.
think that an animated background, if like if you plan it to be like a simple background, like it's totally doable. If it's just like, oh, it's like a shot from down below and you just see the upper corner of the room, and the upper corner of the room just kind of like moves as the camera moves around, like that's totally doable. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, if they're like outside and there's like other people and there's traffic around and there's buildings, like
Mm.
you start getting yourself into like, hey, I just set up a landmine for everyone that comes after me in the
Yeah.
process.
Or like there's a Simpsons animated pan from the '90s in Mr. Burns' office where you watch his like giant white stuffed bear, and if you step through it frame by frame, the bear just like goes in and out of like the most ridiculous poses. It's like trying to draw that, yeah, animate that with the camera move is crazy.
For anybody that's listening that wants to see, in the chat at the top, we posted a Jamboard link, and you can be a spectator to what we're drawing as well. What I was going to say is, just for anybody that doesn't understand animation timing, I think that maybe we could either take one of these two
Like this?
kind
Yeah.
of like three pose phrases, and maybe like maybe for V's, maybe
Yes,
for this.
actually, that would be
I
great
do.
because it also has an effect in it.
Yeah.
We can cover effects as well.
Eventually, I do want you, Shane, to do the "Can I get a job?" smoking chewing gum, because that one's so cool.
Yeah.
It's so dramatic.
I might
Yeah.
have I might have fucked you up by writing out "Can I get a job?" though, and I can erase that if that's helpful.
No, 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 no. It's interesting because it's an effect, and we can kind of talk about. We don't really, we don't really time effects all that intricately because typically in timing, the thing that's most important about timing, especially for me as like a supervisor, is not the timing of action per se, because actions can be, there's no language barrier to action, but there is a language barrier to performance. And so when I'm focusing on the timing of animation of something, I want a lot of effort put into the dialogue-based performance of the characters because whether it's Korea or the Philippines or whatever overseas studio is working, barring Canada, they could probably get it. They speak English, most of them, but
Most.
the or French or but the main focus is really just like putting a lot of care and attention into the timing of the acting performance because that's what we're in charge of, and bad timing can make an animation performance look kind of stiff and wooden and weird, or it can give it an unknown amount of life that like you couldn't see in the boards.
So I think maybe a good exercise here is if we do the "Can I get a job?" but done as a smoke effect, and he's not saying it. What can we talk about that, and then I'll do another pass where I erase "Can I get a job?" and I'll just make him say it while he does the
But
cigarette.
I do want to see I do want to see the timing for his little expression because he's so blasé and like done with life, and I think that's kind of cool. And I want
Yeah.
to know your timing take on that expression.
Sure.
Yeah, it's it's a tough one because the words. So it's, let's see here. The "Can I get a" is it's on the inhale, and then "job" is on the exhale. I see. The only problem is that because of the drifting of the smoke, "job" would come before "Can I get a." So what if we switch it around so that he exhales on job, and then he breathes out, can I get a, you know what I mean? So that way it's like, you don't understand why the word job is coming from the cigarette until after he blows out, can I get a, and even the can I get a can push the job. Now, this is the sort of thing, that we could spend hours talking about, because
Sure.
it's just like the timing aspect of it. It's like when you start getting into the timing of the animation, it's like, oh, it's backwards. It's technically, how can we get around that?
So if I were to do something like this, where we know that he has to say, "Can I get a job?" in the middle of this without any of the smoke effects.
Oh, it'd be, yeah, we could do that. We could say, oh, what we could do is that because job, we can kind of cheat it and make it an E mouth. He has kind of an F mouth there when he's blowing out the smoke. Oh, you didn't have to erase it. It's okay. It's,
Well, why don't I do this? I'm gonna erase "Can I get a," and then just on job,
yeah.
it'll be the exhale. And like if there's any way that you specially annotate it, feel free to, like, if you want to pick the pencil and draw in red or something and make any annotations
Yeah.
around it. I'm curious how you would express this, how you would express this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Totally. And we'll do like a simultaneous thing where he'll say the word job and exhale it just while I'll track read it and lip assign it. And the lip assignment is really with the timing of the animation is kind of, it's not just based on the performance, it's also kind of locked to the dialogue in a lot of ways. Because it's dependent on the dialogue and the performance itself. And so it's always nice to have that's why typically we have the order, it's storyboarded. There's an animatic, and then while the animatic is being built, the audio is being sent to the track reader. And so once it's track written vertically, then it's lip assigned after that. And then once we get the lip assignment back and it's track written, then that, along with the animatic and the conformed storyboards, goes to the timing department. And then the timing department gets to work on the nitty gritty of how to make everything animated frame by frame.
So say we did it this way, and I said that the line read is before he has a cigarette in his mouth, he goes, "Can I get a?" and then he inhales, "Job."
Yeah.
This is so cool for
perfect.
anybody who's like in listening right now. I think this is so cool because it's like what's happening in a meeting, right? Like what's happening when your timing supervisor is talking to their director, I'm guessing, right, Shane?
Yeah.
So you're pretty much we're like simulating you guys being in an animation director's office talking to their
very, very much so. Yeah, like if Sean was the director, like me telling him like, hey, the job is going to come in the wrong order based on the board sequence, so we got to like figure out a fix for that, and we just did. It takes a while to come to a fix because oftentimes you can't fix stuff, you just have to change it and then get the essence of what you were hoping for down, and that's a lot of what it is after the animatic phase.
That is so cool. I'm so excited to be doing this because I mean, for anybody who's like listening right now, like I personally in my career have never talked to a timing supervisor or somebody doing timesheets in a professional setting. So I'm learning just as much as you guys sitting in the room.
Yeah, in many cases, the the people that do board timing or the timing supervisor, it's either removed from our part of the process, basically like we do our work and then they get our work afterwards, so I don't end up having many interactions with them, or they don't exist altogether. And I work on a lot of shows where I do the timing in the boards through animatics, and there isn't even a timing supervisor. So this is something that I really is new to me too, which is why I'm so curious about like how you would dissect this, or like if there's a way that you annotate your like the words or the timing of the words or whatever on a sheet like this. It's new to me too, sort of.
Yeah, it's very strange. It kind of varies from studio to studio, production to production, the workflow. This is very much a traditional animation workflow only. If you're working on a rig-based show, there's no timers on a rig-based show because everybody who's working on the rigs is doing their own timing, and they instantly know if they don't like the timing. They just adjust it themselves. And I don't ever reach out to the board artist. If you're a director, then the timing supervisor will come to you with questions. But if you're just a timer, I've never went to a board artist and be like, hey, can you fix that? Because I don't really know which board artist worked on which sequence. I'm just kind of going through and making sure that it works. And so it's sort of just, I just have to sit down with the director to go over that kind of stuff. And some productions will have the timing supervisor sit in on the lock, and some won't. And it's a very strange job. It's a very obscure job, and it's very misunderstood in a lot of ways. It's very difficult to learn, but there's definitely a shortage of timers in the industry for sure.
Yeah.
If we were to look at this bottom three that V did, I added little mouths on them, and like what if this character were to say, like, oh gosh dang it, and like does a little stomp on dang it, how would you talk about or annotate that kind of timing? I'm just curious.
Oh, sure. Well, I can actually. So the thing we have here is that if we're calling this an antic pose, we would definitely want to keep the expression from pose 1.
Right.
So it's like, we wouldn't want to have an expression change happen in the middle of a sequence like that.
Right.
Obviously, I'm pretending as if you did all this on purpose and not just for fun. But and then if you look at this pose here, this third pose, this isn't a contact. It's really a follow through pose. Because we want the boards really, even though this would be a good storyboard, it's not like for animation. We want the moment he touches here with his foot to be the actual storyboard, ideally, the contact pose. Otherwise, we have to time it with an X and kind of follow through to this pose here, and we just have to tell Korea that, oh, hit here and then kind of follow through there. And then that's when the smoke rises up, the little cloud of smoke from his smack.
Oh, do you mean that like it would first be the contact and then the smoke? So like the problem with this drawing is that there's the smoke and the contact.
Right. Well, and the follow through, because
so we would want like an A.
Exactly.
Makes contact here.
I see.
Exactly.
That's cool.
And I gave it 2 in betweens with a slow in at the end as the follow through from A to B. Like that's just, would be my instinct. Anything more than that and it'll feel too kind of sludgy. Even that might be kind of sludgy. I might even do like an overshoot and a settle.
Yeah.
Which would be like contact, overshoot. I can't.
No, it's okay. Let's go to the new page. I'm gonna redraw it and give you a little more space.
While Sean is doing that, I'd just like to interrupt to ask one of the questions that you received on Instagram that you did answer already, but I just want to, just so we have it so that everyone that's listening to it live can also have that as a thing. So someone on Instagram just asked, I guess like based off of your background as a timing person, like what were the inspirations for making your series?
The Chew Gum cartoon. Yeah, my inspirations were absolutely stuff that did not have timing, for sure. Like Home Movie is the cartoon from like 2003 that it was like Lauren Bouchard's like second cartoon, like he did after Dr. Katz. It's so wild to me that I've worked at his studio on multiple productions, because I remember being like 22 and 23 and not even wanting to be an animator, but just being obsessed with home movies. And I wasn't really sure why, but there was just something about the animation, about the limitedness of it that just really appealed to me. And how it was dialogue driven, but the dialogue didn't have a purpose. It was very meandering, and I had never heard anything like that before. And so that sort of improvisational sort of rambling, getting around to the point eventually sort of thing was very inspiring. And then the Venture Brothers was hugely inspiring. And Flight of the Conchords, I remember being obsessed with that in the late 2000s, right? 2008, 2009 was kind of when they had their HBO show. Oh, and Syphil and Ollie, I was absolutely obsessed with. It's like another 90s sock puppet show. But a lot of that stuff just kind of inspired, I mean, that and just the limitation of getting, like Sean, you were saying, the soup to nuts thing is just whatever will get you to a cartoon. Whatever will, my inspiration is basically anything that I can do or think that I can do. You know, like I have these grand visions in my head, and then I will just kind of secretly compromise and compromise and compromise until I get to something that I'm like embarrassed by, but it's done. And then I'm like, oh wow. And you look back, you're like, hey, this isn't so bad. But yeah, so anything that doesn't, you know, it's like as much as it's fun to watch gorgeous animation like Spider-Verse and things like that, you know, it doesn't really, the only stuff that influences my work is the stuff that I could do as like a single person.
I know what you mean though. I feel like I really relate to that because I feel like, you know, when you're a creator at heart, you're not like, I don't know, this is maybe a hot take, but I feel like when you're creator at heart, you get more inspired by something that you're like, oh, I could do this, rather than something that's like so like amazing and crazy and beautiful and insanely difficult to do, that it's just kind of like, well, why would I even want to try to do that, because I know I can't, like I'm just a single person, right? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's tough. I mean, and I didn't want to go the webcomic route because, you know, I'm not a great draftsman and I don't get the same, like I'm looking at your guys' drawings and they're like gorgeous and I'm like totally jealous. But when I sit and draw, I don't feel that sense of accomplishment as I do even when I just like jiggle a cube on a screen. You know, it's like I love movement and I'm okay with assigning a personality to a cube. I mean, like what was that Chuck Jones short, right? Like the circle and the line or something like that. You know, where you can, that was really kind of informative to me. Like it doesn't matter what you're doing, you can personify anything. Yeah. And as long as it moves and has a personality, it's, yeah.
I think that's also what's cool with, I don't know, with Chugum is that I know I remember you said that it started with them just being little like cubes or square that you were moving around the screen, and then eventually you gave them a more anthropomorphic appearance.
Yeah.
And
there was oh, go ahead.
I guess I was just gonna say, like, I think what's really cool is that, you know, when I watch these videos, I know with my current skills I can't replicate what you're doing, because there's like a lot of craftsmanship that goes in these videos. It's not only knowing how to do 3D, how to animate, how to write, and how to write
also
songs.
Making a song.
Yeah,
it's voice acting.
It's a lot. And I was something I was really curious about, because I was watching your videos and I'm like, I wonder what Shane's voice sounds like in real life.
Oh, my real voice, yeah.
Because you do all the voices, right?
Yeah, I do everything. Yeah. The only thing I don't do personally is some of the environments. I'll usually buy them as kits off of the Unreal Engine store. They're designed for video games, but you can use, like, they work so great for a cartoon.
Yeah.
But yeah, even like that's the funny thing is that I'm mediocre at so many things, but if you combine them all, you still get a cartoon at the end. So like I'm not a voice actor. I can't do voices, and I can't, if you put a script in front of me, the performance is not going to be great per se. But if I have an idea of some plot points I need to get across and I ramble for a while and then I edit that rambling down, all of a sudden it can sound natural.
Is that how you?
But it was also years.
Is that how you voice act? Is it just like, do you just kind of like give yourself like a lot of like audio B-roll, I guess?
Yeah, no, I mean it's literally, yeah, just like can I get a job? No, you can't get a job. Why not? Well, because we're not hiring. Why aren't you hiring? Well, I'm not a business. I'm just a guy standing here. Will you move? Okay. I'm sorry. You need a job? Yeah. What? You know, it's just like...
And you just do it over and over again until you're like, okay, I
yes.
think I said enough versions where there's probably like a right take in there somewhere.
No, totally. And actually, it's one of the really nice things is that I'm bad at knowing when I've done something to death, but my partner is very good at... I like having her in the room while I'm improvising, even though it's like super embarrassing, because then she'll be like, you've done that section to death. I think there's something there, but this part's weak. And so I'll be like, okay. So when I go back and edit my own stuff, I'm like, oh my God, why did I say that 15 times? Like, I don't need all that.
There's not many people that talk about the value of having a second opinion.
Yes.
It's really important.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it changed everything. Yeah, even because I mean, I don't know, that's not that personal, but I was like, my last girlfriend, she broke up with me before I actually formally became an animator. And I spent so many years trying to, because when you first get into animation, I don't know about you guys, but for me, it felt fake and it felt like it was going to go away at any moment.
Yeah.
And so I was working multiple jobs at once. I was doing everything I could. And I was like, I want to ride this as long as it'll last, because it just does not feel like I'm going to get to stay. And so I didn't date anybody. I didn't go on any dates for years, and almost like a decade. And so this is the first time I've ever had like a partner, like a romantic partner who, as an animator, I'm like, oh wow, this is, and she has like super interesting opinions and advice, and she set up the actual Twitter account. She probably is the one who followed you. Like, it probably wasn't even me. I mean, we kind of split duties on a lot of that stuff because I just don't. It's like, it's so much work.
Yeah, because
doing all of that stuff.
I remember your Twitter account says it says something along the lines of like, this is like a joined or like managed account.
Yes.
So I was like, oh, this could be like a producer. You could have hired someone to do this. So that's why when I PM'd you, I was like, hey, if Shane's available or whatever, I was like, I might not be talking to Shane. Yeah,
exactly. Well, and because I felt guilty because I always try to reply to people when I see replies. I try to reply to everybody, because these are humans. And I don't get that many comments, so it's not like it takes that much energy to reply to people. But she was always like, "Hey, you got a message." Like, "Hey, you got a message." And I was like, "Oh, shoot. Okay." Yeah. But without her, I mean, she had the idea for the Kickstarter because she's like, "You're going to make this cartoon anyway, right? You're going to do this no matter what, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to try." And she's like, "Well, why not make it a Kickstarter and try to like make it legitimate?" And I was like, "Oh, because it'll fail." And she's like, "Yeah, but that's kind of the point." I try not to be a pessimist. I try not to, but I don't believe I am, because pessimists don't make stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I've never let my pessimism stop me from finishing a project.
No, but I get that.
But
because I feel like believing in yourself as an artist, and like, this is me getting real for a little bit on Twitter Live, everyone. But every time, that's like my Achilles heel as well. Like, I have like a little writers group, and every time my mentor in the writers group is like, "You're great, you should believe in yourself," and shit like that, I'm like, turn the camera off, because like, I'm like, I start crying, and I'm like, fuck.
Oh no.
know? So there's a little bit of that. I feel like, I mean, if you're in animation, if you're an artist, you're probably dealing with some kind of like an imposter syndrome, and I mean, it's really hard. It's really hard to overcome that. So yeah.
Well, especially as a timing director, because you're not a board artist, you're not a director, and there's this prevailing notion that what you're doing isn't always that creative. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes it just feels like a ton of problem solving, but you're making so many minuscule creative choices, including adjusting scene cuts, adjusting camera moves, because there's only so much an editor can do, and there's only so much a board artist can do. You're bringing stuff to life, but there is sort of a sense of being on the outside, being after the fact.
Yeah.
And so one of my big things was, I need to make something of my own to at least kind of make me feel legit. It's like, if you look at my cartoons and you don't like my timing on my own personal projects, then, don't hire me.
Sure.
But it's like,
Well, it sort of seems like it's like you're like someone doing a jigsaw puzzle. Like, someone's already designed the puzzle, but you are making sure it's in the right order and making sure that it's cohesive and makes sense and comes together in the final image. And that's still very important to the puzzle being done, or else the puzzle wouldn't get done.
Exactly. But there's also a sort of feeling, you do that for half a decade and you're like, wow, I'm not involved in any of the early creative decisions that inform that. I'm like, so, it's like, without a personal project, I don't know that I would have survived.
I think you'd be surprised about how, like, even for people that are doing quote unquote creative jobs on shows, I don't know if that feeling goes away. If you're somebody that really wants to make your own stuff, regardless of whether you're drawing something for someone's project or timing something on someone's project, it's someone else's project. If making your own project is a very important thing to
Dude, that's actually something that I realized working in feature. I thought directors had a lot more power than what they actually did. I was like, oh shoot, that you're in meetings sometimes and you kind of hear what's being talked about, or like you talk to them a little bit, and then you realize like, oh man, you still have to follow so many rules. And it's kind of crazy sometimes to think about. Yeah, and I think that's why like the three of us were like kind of people to just do our things on the side, because then you have complete control and you have complete, like, it's your thing. It's like you're like, I mean, Sean, you do your full animations with like a studio digital. I have a webcomic, and Shane, you have your web series, and it's like that's the only, dude, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding to do your own thing and put it out there, right? I don't know. It's like,
Yeah. It's also very vulnerable, and I think that
yes.
it's funny. It's funny sometimes because I'll talk to my partner, and she'll say sometimes that it like sometimes it doesn't seem like when I'm working on my own stuff that I like it. Because it's so hard, because when I'm working on it, everything feels more important, everything feels more dire.
Yeah.
It feels like I'm a bad writer. It feels, because like I care about the things more, and so when I'm doing it, I'm like, oh my god, how am I gonna do this? It's not working. Like,
No,
I
know.
but when the finished thing comes out, there's like nothing like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
It's no. I am constantly talking about how much I hate animation. Like, it's such a funny. It's like constantly. It's like, I hate animation. I don't want to watch it. I hate it. Like everything. It's, and she'll be like, you keep saying that, and then you just spent 10 hours animating. I was like, yeah, I know, but I hate it. It's like,
you're like Miyazaki. It's just like, I'm done with this. And you're just you can't stop. You can't stop. This is your curse. To some. I mean, I joke, but it's kind of true. Like, I feel like that's why I keep bringing back. Clem is gonna. You know what? I'm gonna stick to this until the end of Creative Block. But my running gag is Bukowski, because I keep bringing back Bukowski and how he's just like, on his headstone it says "Don't try." Because it means basically that if you're cursed with this passion, you're going to be doing it no matter what. So it's kind of that for me with comics. It's like,
well, it's what Shane said before a little bit. It like, at the root of it, we're either mediocre at many things and it turns into one finished thing, or almost good at many things and it turns into one finished thing. But that's just it. It's many different things, and you don't have to like all of those individual parts to like what it turns into. And I think that's the thing about this whole process is like, yeah, I might struggle with writing. I might not like editing. I might like
Right.
drawing more, but at the end of the day, I like making a full cartoon on my own. But yeah, it doesn't mean that you have to be in the mood for each of those individual parts. And if you're like grumpy while you're doing it, it doesn't mean that you hate doing that thing necessarily.
Yeah, that's true. I try to compartmentalize it all, but it's very difficult.
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, and before we get too far from what that timing of that smoke thing, I read through the little the little timing, and hopefully you have a little bit more space and we can erase these words. I'd love to see how you think about it.
Yeah, I do love the essay. I appreciate that.
That's some paper shit. That's some boarding on paper. I storyboarded on paper for regular show, and so that's the only time I've ever boarded on paper on a production. But I have done it.
Yeah. Well, because it's, if you don't do it, then it's our job to indicate it to Korea. So we put it on the sheets. So we'll put this panel essay ourselves if it's not there. So we always got to be on the lookout for stuff that doesn't move.
Yeah, for the audience, basically when a pose doesn't change or a background doesn't change, you can write SA, which is same as. So it's the same as the last pose, and I just sort of trace what the outline of the pose, just to show like the pose is still here, but I'm not going to draw it another damn time on paper.
Yeah. Oh, so were you saying we should start in on this? Do the timing thing?
Well, yeah, I would love to see what you do.
Yeah, let's do it. Let me I'm gonna make it full screen on my end so I can like see stuff. So we have, okay, so let's see here. So we'll start by, I'll assign these letters, A, B, C, D, E. We'll call those panels.
Nice.
We'll start the scene as if this was scene 1. We'll expose this panel as gum. And I'll write gum with cigarette, just so that it's there. Let's see here. Oh, did I not give myself enough room? Let me raise this. I'll make this tinier because I still want to do the track reading and the lip assignment. So there's very little room for. There we go.
I know.
So
Sorry, you're having to make something very small on what you probably normally have a full timing sheet for.
yeah.
By the way,
No,
this
it's okay.
this is so cool. This isn't something that we've done
Yeah.
on Creative Block. This particular thing, and it's very interesting. I just want you to know that what you're doing is cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's nice. Okay, so let's see here. Hey, can I get a job? And we'll just hey. Can I get a, and I'll have him say job as he's
like
Sure.
blowing it out.
that's that's way too
Jube!
truncated. Yeah, it's way too well. Jube or job or
No,
okay,
no,
so
I'm
let's
just
hear.
kidding. No, you're good. You're good.
All right, so if I was to lip assign this, I would go start with an A mouth. That's the closed mouth. J. Well, no, we'll do K. I always forget that there's K mouths because American Dad doesn't use K mouths. We just use the C mouth for K.
Interesting.
Hey. A. J. C. J. K. Oops.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Why do you put the J mouth? Is it
What's that?
what's the J mouth for?
Oh, J is like a K mouth but with gritted teeth.
Oh,
So
I see.
that's J, and then that's K. That's nothing, but yeah, J mouth is basically, at least on American Dad, we use the J mouth for hard consonants. Yeah, like I'm using it for this G sound. Can I get a I'll do an E mouth just for fun. Job. Hey. Okay, so there we go. So that would be the lip assignment. And then to the right of this, if you could imagine, there's also something like called neutral smile frown mouths. So there's, for every emotion. And I would just assign that an N so that the studio knew that was a neutral mouth. Maybe a frown, but okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see here. So right off the bat, actually, okay, I'm going to do something kind of crazy. This is how timers think.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why timing is so important. So even though you boarded it A, B, C, D, I'm actually
going to
going to...
be B, A, B, sort of, right?
Exactly.
Okay, that's
exactly.
I realized what you were thinking about.
Yeah. Exactly. So I'm going to expose B as the first panel. So that way I can move to A through the hey. And we can assume that his expression has changed a little bit. Like maybe I would draw this thicker just so that you can, that's not supposed to be squinting. That's just supposed to be a lid lower so that his lids can actually raise a little bit. And I would separate let me erase this. I would separate his expression change from his head and his arm so that we would have the expression to A. His head could raise with like a slow in at the end. And then his arm would be 3 in-betweens. And I would make it so I can't erase with the way the way Cintiq erases. So I would slow in his arm. So it would be expression, head, and arm. And I would make sure the arm hits on the end of that hey. So he's like, hey. So going from B to A. Can I get let's see here. And then I'd hold that for a while. We could just go back, just something simple. All is one move without any eases. Back to B. I'll separate the expression from the head and the arm. because when you're going back and forth between two poses, you really don't want the timing to be too similar, because then it starts to look like a cycle. By having no eases or no slow ins or no slow outs the second time through, it forces Korea to create different in-betweens than they would use for the first move. So they can't, you gotta try to force them to do as much drawing as possible, because they'll cheat when they think they can get away with it. And you want as much, original drawing as possible. These aren't common things to think about, but they're always something, as a supervisor, I'm trying to think of, like, I want as many drawings as possible without it being unreasonable. Like, I'm putting this on 2s, not on 1s. I'm not, a monster, especially for slow moves. And I wish I had more room, because what I would do is, he absolutely should go to the C expression. I would time it so that, let's see here. Let's erase this. This is a little funky, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to time it to an X and then follow through. So I would write left hand cigarette to mouth. And I would indicate it with an X, because then I would like for him to follow through to that C pose to kind of help sell the inhale, because we don't have that additional pose where he puts it to his lips, then goes down.
Right.
And so now we're getting to a place where
so you're treating the current pose as X, or the initial contact pose that isn't as drastic as, like, if I were to add another pose right here where you're not fully he's not bending over. That
is exactly it. For the most part, exactly. For the most part, as long as the breakdown can be interpreted as a direct breakdown and not like, because some breakdowns are offset from the natural arc because they help sell, like, personality and things like that, or kind of helps with overlap and drag. But if the breakdown can be interpreted as pretty much straightforward, then it's okay. For at least me personally, every production is different, but it's okay to indicate it with just an X. Because then they'll kind of know that you're following. And I would write the words follow through, FOLOTHRU, just like that, to the pose. And then now the timing I like. The lip assignment is no longer accurate. So we kind of have to use our imagination a little bit. Can I scroll down?
No, I'm sorry. No, we ran out of space. Well, it's also we don't have to completely finish it if you run out of space. That's okay.
Well, this is
so cool
more
though.
than,
Because I feel like this is such an in-depth look that we never get, and it's so interesting because you showed a couple of things that I don't think people think about. First of all, you showed that you can label a pose X to kind of create a new pose out of pose that are in the boards, and also just kind of like how you kind of think of the different body parts and how you animate them differently. And I think that's just really, really cool. And there's a lot of thinking that goes into it, and it's very like minute.
That's what makes the job so interesting and so hard to understand for a lot of people. That's why it's like one of the most obscure, fields for people to break into.
I feel like a future civilization is going to stumble across a timing sheet and think that it's a math equation and be like, "Oh, they were doing image math." Because it's such it looks like a chart. It looks like okay, yeah, we have to graph the parabola of the G mouth.
You wrote in the comments on Twitter. So for anybody who's listening in the Twitter space, we advertise the Twitter space that we're doing right now on Instagram, and a couple of people asked some questions on Instagram, and Shane answered one of the questions, which was about how he studied timing a little bit, and you said that you were keeping a notebook in which you would write down timing from like different shows that you were watching. And how do you note down timing? Do you just kind of write with words as like, for example, like, oh, in the show they do this blink that way, or did you actually have like a timing sheet in which you were trying to write it like you would do on the job?
So this is so funny. It amazes me that I ended up becoming a timer because a lot of people, it's pretty common for people to be like studying The Simpsons, and a lot of people will study the storyboards of The Simpsons. But what I was doing is I wasn't drawing frames from the show, but I was writing longhand these paragraphs describing different moves that I saw. So before I even knew timing was a job, I instinctively was just like, okay, Homer's arm came in and they only used 2 drawings and they put it on 2s. But then when he grabbed the knob and turned like the knob on the TV, it was 3 in-betweens on 1s. And they held it for 4 frames, and then they got his arm out of there in 2 drawings on 2s. And I refound, I wish I could find it again, but I found like these pages and pages of just paragraphs of me just describing the job I do now, just in long form.
That's great.
It's wild. It's very weird. But then after I became a timer, then I would, when I was learning and I understood that there was like this sheet music for animation, I would reverse engineer moves that I liked. And I would invite anybody to do this, even if you don't know how to transcribe it, to just start making folders of clips of moves you like. Because the way animation moves, it's not recyclable, but it's like the same movement can be applied to a lot of different poses because so much animation is like acting based, and performance driven, that if you see something you like, even down to a blink, like I remember there was a blink in Iron Giant, and like a character blink in Iron Giant, and I thought it was gorgeous, and I was like, what is that? Why is that not the way a Simpsons character blinks? And it was essentially, I mean, the short answer is it was on 1s, but they added a lot of slow ins to the eye opening that weren't there when the eyes closed. And like they held the eye closed position for like 2 or 3 in-betweens, or 2 or 3 frames before opening it again. And it was just like this nice, like, oh, wow. So that you can use that. I used it later on other shows I worked on when there was like a blink, because blinks are pretty pedestrian unless they're used to indicate, unless they're used to punctuate something. But then it's like I could always go back and I remember the timing of that blink. And while it might not pertain exactly to the proportions of a character on another show, the timing still works. So yeah, I definitely kept timing journals for the longest time. It's kind of funny because if you start to realize that timing is an art form different, void of storyboarding when you start really analyzing cartoons. Like on The Simpsons, the old seasons of The Simpsons, and The Simpsons kind of invented like this version of timing we use now, this very intricate version of timing where there's no layout phase anymore. Where the timing kind of takes over the layout, or like kind of compensates for it, and it becomes very complicated in the timing phase. But if you watch old episodes of The Simpsons, you'll notice that for a long time the timers got into a bad habit, or not just a habit, of blinking at the end of every line of dialogue. They put an arm down and they would blink. And if you start looking at it, you realize every character blinks when they end their line. And it's just, once you start noticing it, you're like, oh my God, everybody's blinking multiple lines. Every time Homer puts his arm down, he blinks. Every time Bart finishes a sentence, he blinks. And it's like, and it looks good. But then when it starts happening 30 times an episode, one of the things that the supervising director on American Dad was very particular about was like, don't blink too often. I don't want constant blinking, because it's
That's so interesting.
Yeah, I was imagining your timing journal being like, it's like beside your bedside, and you like wake up from a nightmare in a sweat and a panic, and you open up your green journal, and you're like, okay, so the monster was doing a 4-legged run cycle on 3s, and when I fell down, there was this follow through to point X. Like,
I wish, yeah.
And then inside of your bedroom just becomes
yeah.
that like meme, the Charlie Day meme of just like this.
Oh,
yeah, you're
well,
like
I mean,
putting papers on the wall, little strings.
it's not that.
Thing.
It's not that. Sometimes it gets that little crazy where you're like, oh my gosh, this timer worked on this show, but then they also worked on this show, and these moves are very kind of similar, and yeah.
Kind of a left field question, I guess, but not entirely. Because you've worked mostly on Western timing. Do you watch anime? Do you have opinions on the way anime is timed?
I don't have opinions, mostly just because it's intentionally limited, so it's hard to, I think because Western animation is animated. It's not animated in like FPS. I mean, it runs at 24 FPS, but it's animated in footage, 16 frames per foot, 5 feet per sheet. And it's like 3 feet equals 2 seconds of animation. And so I'm thinking when I think animation, I think in 16s, 12s, 8s, and I think their footage is different or something. They run it like, I can't remember. It's something like I don't think it's 30 FPS, but they have like their own unique system, and they only have like three mouth shapes, and everything is on threes. And one of the hard things about stepping through anime to study it is that sometimes you can't tell if something's on twos because it's bad encoding and you got it off a torrent site, or if it's truly intentional, because so much of it's on threes, and stylistically, the only thing I really take away from anime for me personally is that you can get away with a lot if you care about the characters. Like if you care about the characters, then you don't mind the animation.
I think that's true in a lot of settings. Like for example, I always bring up South Park in terms of like South Park looks the way it looks, but people love it because the stories are compelling, or like there's so it's kind of interesting. No, I just kind of I just kind of was wondering if you had ever kind of like studied anime timing a little bit, or
a little bit, but so anime, obviously they do their own timing because they do their own everything.
Yeah.
So you can't really study anime timing because they're so in control of what they're doing that anytime there's like an antic, or a smear or any of that stuff, it's too much outside the realm of just timing.
I see.
So it's fun to look at, and it's fun to study, and you're like, oh my gosh, they just had this character like antic down, two in betweens, antic, and then they run off screen in like two in betweens, even though they're taking up the full frame, and it's like stroby, and it's cool looking, but there's like smearing going on, and you can indicate smear frames on the sheets if you really want to, but there's certain effects that you really shouldn't have boards for.
What about like a super fluid anime fight scene, for instance? I don't know how much you've looked or animated or analyzed those, or is it so unconventional because you're used to working on character timing where they're not like zooming towards the camera and a flash hits and like sort of
so I remember the guy who kind of was my mentor for timing. He was also actually the timing supervisor on Bob's Burgers just the first like 5 seasons. He actually went through and timed a Dragon Ball Z fight scene as if it were like Western boarded, and the sheet looks ridiculous because it's just like it's all like kind of like on ones, and it's just, if I were to write it on here, it was so funny.
It's just very complicated.
Yeah, well, in a way it's complicated, but at the same time, timing-wise, it's very simple because it's complicated drawings, straightforward timing. So action is something where if a fight scene is boarded well, the timing will almost look like a straight line because it's like you don't want to interfere with everything that's going on. It's happening so quickly that it's okay for it to just kind of go straight ahead.
As you're talking, there's something that I'm realizing, because for anybody who's listening right now in the space, there's a really, really cool animator. I think his name is Dong Huang. He both animated for Western shows and anime. And there's a video where he shows how a blink is done in Western animation and anime. And he uses two panels to kind of show the boards, and I realized like, oh, wait a minute, that's what the difference is that in anime the boards are very, very, very simple. There's not a lot of drawing because all of it is done at the animation stage, so that's what it is. Whereas for us in Western shows, we have very, very
thorough boards,
yes, because we kind of put a little bit, like we've kind of split duties with the timers, in board artists and timers kind of create the blueprints for the animation, whereas in anime,
Well,
the
even
animators,
we even
yeah,
yeah, we even split the
Yeah.
duties a little bit with like the keyframe and layout
yes.
at certain points too.
Well, layout doesn't exist anymore, so because
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's where you get
Let's-
this thing where you have board artists adding a bunch of breakdowns as boards. And you're like, well, okay, if it's a direct breakdown, you don't need to be doing this. It makes the animatic look pretty, but it doesn't.
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
Killing yourself for
one
nothing.
day if we could just kind of like come together like timers and board artists and kind of like go over like like what we don't actually need to do, because I feel like there's some boards that are definitely overposed and we don't need to be doing as much work. But I feel like maybe there's sometimes there's like poses that you guys don't get, and that is kind of like a pain in the ass. Do you?
Oh, well, let's talk about that briefly now. Is there anything that you see board artists do that is like a common mistake that you either want to see more of that they're not doing, or they are doing and you don't need them to do for like what you get into?
Yes. So definitely don't board blinks. That's wild. Antics are not usually necessary if they're common sense.
Nice.
Boarding overshoots is a waste because we can just write overshoot and indicate how little we want it to be. Anything that's so overshoots, antics, blinks.
So what do you mean by antics? Just for the
okay.
the listeners.
The antic is like the opposite of an overshoot. No, the antic is so antic is short for anticipation, and it's basically just indicates the character is going to move in the opposite direction of where they intend to. Beyond that, I don't know how I would describe it. It's usually just kind of like a counterforce weight to prepare for a movement.
So
It's pretty common
on
for
that,
stuff
on that
that's-
first page that we had, is it that movement that V did where the character is like going backwards and stepping out before they do the follow through pose when they hit the ground?
Yes.
That would be a
stomp.
crazy anticipation, though.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, it would be board. It would need to be a board. Because it's so not predictable as an antic. A real, like, you could not do a leg raise as an antic. That's too much information missing.
Yeah.
It would totally need a board.
I got you.
Totally need a board. Yeah. But basic subtle movements. Like if somebody drops to the ground, sometimes their head will kind of lift up before they drop to the ground.
Yeah.
The head lifting up before they drop doesn't need to be a board. I see a lot of, I think it's mostly board artists who do stuff on CG shows, and then they just get into the habit of overboarding and doing all of this stuff. But like anything digital, like we throw out before it ever gets overseas. So if you kind of like do a head nod and it's clearly like digital, or if you try to do like even like an overshoot and a settle where you're just like digitally stretching the head but not the face, and then repositioning the face just a little bit so that so it doesn't look like it's all digital, like that stuff gets tossed out. It makes the animatic look pretty, but it gets thrown away before anybody who's like animating the show actually sees it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I kind of wanted to talk a little bit too about music, because you write and play music. Sean also plays music and writes music, and I was wondering, would you kind of say, like, do you ever use anything that you've learned in music for timing and vice versa? Because it's both like time-based creativity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no. Well, it helped me learn timing, I think, quicker than I would have otherwise. Like, so like Homer Simpson walks on 12 frame steps, whereas Stan Smith walks on 8 frame steps. And I was having a hard time getting my head around what that feels like until I realized that Homer walks at 120 BPM. And I was like, I know that. I know what that feels like. But Stan walks at like between 140 and 160. He's like Katy Perry, pop song. I'm like, okay, I know that feeling. Like, because part of timing is being able to see it in your head.
That's so crazy.
Feel
That's
it.
so cool. That's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, you wake up in a sweat and write in your dream journal that the monster was chasing you for 4 measures, and every time it barked at you, it did a quarter note.
Yeah. Yeah, so there was little things like that, and then yeah, just kind of good music is the most difficult thing to time. It is it's so much more difficult than a standard sitcom because there's when music hits, when there's like a musical hit, it depends whether you want to follow through that hit or precede that hit depends on whether you're playing an instrument or you're doing like a dance move. So like the guitar, you always want the left hand, the chord hand, to hit the pose before the actual chord is heard. But you want the hand to ring out through the chord because that's how the chord is being generated. So when you think in terms of music, you're thinking in terms of the timing of where everything needs to hit and when. And once you do something complicated like music, an acting performance is very simple.
So is timing out like a musical section, is that like the bane of your existence when like, are you like,
absolutely is. Well, I mean, on so many levels, because as a songwriter, I'm like, oh wow, they whoever they got to write this song.
It's sort of ironic because you love making music.
I just don't love animating other people's music. Yeah, no, but I'm good at it. I just hate it with a passion. But no, it's yeah, it is tough. It's a very quick training ground for sure. But yeah, I think the music definitely informed, especially because I started out trying to make music videos, which you don't realize is like the most difficult thing when you're just kind of trying to make your own thing. But then starting out doing something very difficult, everything else is kind of simpler by comparison.
Yeah. Since we're talking about music and animating and all that, like, can you kind of run us through a little bit of like your process when you create a chew gum video? Like, like do you kind of like write your script first, or like do you just kind of like do you start with a visual in your head? How's that process like for you?
So it definitely varies. Sometimes it'll actually start with a song, and then I'll work backwards to find a way to make that song make sense in the context of conversation. Or I'll force it and the song will be weird, but it really depends. It always starts with either a snippet of, because I'll wander around my apartment just talking in character voices and being silly until something makes me laugh enough to where I will like send it to my girlfriend. In fact, the very first episode I made had this song about 2 trash cans, and it was the whole song is just, I got 2 trash cans to separate the shit from the shit. And that started as like a snap that I sent to my girlfriend because I literally bought 2 trash cans to do that, and she saved it. And when I was like, I want to make a new version of the characters that I had before the pandemic and make this cartoon, but I need a song and I don't know what I'm gonna do. And she's like, what about this song? I was like, that's too stupid. She's like, yeah, but isn't that what you're trying to do? And I was like, oh yeah. So man, all I had was this insane song.
You really saved so much money by dating your producer.
Seriously. Oh, well, and heartache.
We've tried to date Marco so many times, but it hasn't worked out, and we have to pay Marco.
Yeah. It is definitely a lifesaver, though. I mean, I feel like so many creative decisions were made for me. I love guidelines. I love rules because when you're doing your own thing, you can do anything. And sometimes that's not fun. But when you have somebody else being like, well, don't do that, do this. And you'll be like, well, that doesn't sound interesting, but maybe I can make it interesting for me. And then it ends up being really cool. But yeah, starting episode, like the idea, it always has to start with audio. I've created animatics in the past, but because it's all for me and for myself, I will drop dummy characters in CG into like an environment, and I'll kind of like block out some shots based on the dialogue performance.
Well, that's sort of like boarding for you.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense for your process.
Yeah, because I can use my imagination to gauge. Well, the nice thing about 3D is that if I have a character's acting performance go outside the scope of the frame that I initially set up, I can just, work backwards and truck it out. Actually, I don't even have to truck it out. Oftentimes, you can just adjust the lens size so that
Yeah.
it's just like go from 50 millimeters to 48 millimeters. You don't have to move the camera at all, but then all of a sudden the arm is in frame. You're like,
Yeah.
saved.
Yeah.
And it doesn't warp the lens enough for me to care because it's just for me.
I'm curious. This is a little bit of a tangent. And we don't have to stay on this. I'm curious that there's this scene in the Matrix where Cypher is watching the computer and the Matrix code is going down, and Neo's like, like what do you see? And he's like, to you it's just numbers, but I see like, girl with red hair, guy with a briefcase, whatever. When we're talking to you, in your head, are you thinking J mouth, E mouth? like is it like a timing sheet running by in your head as we're talking to you?
Not necessarily, but I can look at an X sheet even without storyboards, and I can see problem areas even in timing alone, void of drawings.
That's cool.
I can totally look at sheets, like sheets and sheets and sheets, and I'll be like, this is whatever this is. It doesn't matter what the boards are. This is going to come out wonky, or this is clearly there's a mistake
That's
here.
so crazy.
So
That's
it's
really
definitely
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry for the tangent. I had this thought.
Yeah. No, I mean, it totally is like Matrix code. I mean, it took forever to learn. First, it takes forever to learn the terminology. Then it takes forever to absorb it so that you can glance at something and look at it and see it and then interpret it in your head visually. I actually have a weird issue where I see stuff flipped sometimes if I'm working on my own projects. Like if I try to imagine acting poses, they're always accidentally flipped. I don't know why. It took me a while to figure out that I was seeing things backwards. I was like, why can't I draw this? It's like I'm trying to draw a flipped image of it. Yeah, I don't know if there's a name for that, but luckily in 3D you can just turn stuff around.
I think, yeah, dude. Yeah, that is so cool. I think, do you ever get inspiration from like 3D environments that you grabbed? Are you ever like, oh, I'm inspired by this 3D environment, and now I kind of want to write a song about that?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I'm big on working within what I have, and so anytime I see something that inspires me, or I'm like, oh, I could use that, I always will write to it. I'll always write for what I have available to me. But I will also, like, I did a cover of Teenage Dirtbag, and I had them chew and gum their old versions of them perform it, and I knew I wanted them in a gymnasium, so I splurged on like a $70 gymnasium, giving myself my own little animation budget. But yeah, anytime I see an environment that is inspiring, I'll work backwards from that for sure.
That's so cool. I love that. Like, you were, I don't know, there was like one of your videos where one of the characters is like, oh, like the apples in stereo, that sounds fake, and I'm like, wow, you listen to this band? I feel like I'm the only person who listens to this band. What are your favorite bands?
Yeah, I know. Well, that's kind of like coming from the background of being, because I grew up just north of Seattle, and I grew up I grew up around a time where Death Cab was a huge local band, but they hadn't become like mainstream yet, because I was in high school in the 2000s. So I would go and see Death Cab all the time, like when I was in high school, and watching them blow up. But that DIY, kind of aesthetic or whatever was always ingrained in us. And this was around the time where digital 4-tracks were possible. So any music that sounded like what I was capable of making, I liked. So like the magnetic fields, the apples in stereo, neutral milk hotel, and like all that kind of stuff was really inspiring. It took me a while to get there. I had to kind of go through. You start out with like Smashing Pumpkins and Radiohead, and then you find out their influences of like Queen and David Bowie and Suede and the Pixies. And then in Seattle at the time, there was like Sunny Day Real Estate and the Fire Theft and the Posies and Harvey Danger and Death Cab, and Modest Mouse was like around that time. But yeah, even just like reading about Elephant Six and like the B-52s and how there's like this whole Athens, Georgia music scene, and thanks to the internet, you can kind of like explore and learn about all these different cliques that you never got to be a part of. But when you're like an outsider, you gravitate towards that. I've always had a very was always like jealous of people who were a part of a scene. I'm just like, man, I've always been like alone. Even in coming into animation, I jumped from freelance to my first in-house job was American Dad. So, and it was all such an established show, and everybody who was working on that show has been working on it for, 10 years by the time I even showed up. So they're all older. They don't have like side projects that they're working on. And so I was like, oh man, I see all these people online who are my age making cartoons in the industry, but I don't know any of them. And we're not like work acquaintances, and I'm not going to go out and like, get a different job just to be with people closer to my age. Like, I'm not leaving
now we know
prime
each other.
time. Just
Us three know each other, so that's a good step.
No, but
No,
there's
I know.
something that's
I
really
know,
true to
but
what you're
it's-
saying, Shane, because there's something, okay, what you're saying about music, I relate to on the comic side, because for the longest time, I was like, I want to make comics. Comics is my first love. I went into animation because that's how I can make money with drawing, but I wish I could just make comics full time, but comics doesn't really pay the bills. And I see and then I saw everybody on like a bunch of people, like really, really amazing artists who also work in animation who have like their own webcomic. And I was just like, oh, if I only could be part of this little circle, and they're all exhibiting at Kala and not me. And then I just started doing the thing, and then you start doing the thing, and people are like, hey, you're doing the thing, and all of a sudden you're part of the club, and it's so cool, and you're like, yeah, I made it in.
Oh yeah, that dynamic in between like being in a band and touring bands and being in a scene versus being like, it sounds like what you were doing was you were being a solo artist and recording your own stuff, but like that it's easy to feel siloed, like we were talking about, sort of like you were preparing to be in quarantine from the beginning, just in how you were working. So like had you been in bands with other musicians and met people that way, or had you always just wanted to make your own stuff and you didn't really have an interest in being in bands?
Oh, I was in bands for sure, especially in high school.
Nice.
The high school band, yeah, we would change our name every year. For freshman, sophomore, senior year, we always had different band names.
Dude,
It was
names
just the
are
same
so
three
hard.
guys. Dude,
Band names.
I know. That's why we kept changing it. But I was in a band for sure. And then I just kind of kept recording more and more. One of the issues I had with being in a band was that I would write songs, I would record them, and then I would want to be done with them. And, like a very like guided by voices sort of way, except I didn't want to actually memorize them and perform them live. I just wanted to move on from them. And so it's difficult to be in a band dynamic where everyone's like, are we really going to take the time to rehearse all this stuff if you're just going to throw these songs out? And so I could not figure out how to be in a band that would just churn through songs.
Sure.
So I went the solo route. And that's when it sort of became depressing, because as I was getting older and I was not becoming successful at this thing I wanted so badly, that's when I turned to animation just as a creative outlet that didn't have any stress attached to it. And one of the things I realized was that songs in cartoons don't get performed live. They don't get played more than, they don't get recorded more than once. No one's rehearsing cartoon songs, but you can watch them forever. And they're a part of the context of those songs, make them so powerful. And I was like, oh, there's potentially a venue for these one-time only songs. And that's when I started really trying to study animation.
Yeah.
So to kind of justify my songwriting process.
Do you have some initial either songs that were animated in shows or animated music videos that initially inspired you in this way?
Oh gosh. Yes. Yeah. I mean, the
Gorillas.
Powerpuff Girls. No, actually, that was later.
Sure,
Like the fact that the Powerpuff Girls had the apples in stereo in like Signal in the Sky, like when you're young and impressionable, you're like, oh, who is this band? They sound so cool. You discover things that way. Pete and Pete had the magnetic fields in it, and the theme song by Polaris was just so like
Yeah.
da da da.
Dude,
It's just like oh,
yeah, I remember in Doug, like the big song, or
banging
like
on a trash can, or yeah, banging on a trash can, drumming on a street light.
so tight.
One little
You
voice
do a
is
good Doug
calling me,
voice.
calling. Well, I mean, it's just basically.
You say you're
You
not
have a
good
Doug
at voice
voice.
acting, but you can do all the voices. I'm literally so jealous. I tried to do scratch voices for my short. I can do only like 2 voices, and they're not even that good.
Well, no,
Yeah.
me too. I mean, that was just gum, just pitched down a little bit. You know, I'd say you can't. I mean, if I was like, "Hey, funny," oh, hey, Roger, you're an idiot. Oh, okay.
No, I mean that's
Screw you,
great.
Doug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Yeah, but I remember like, hey Arnold, like I saw your face and wow. Like I remember like all these different like songs from cartoons when I was a kid, and it's been forever since I saw those songs, and I hardly remember other episodes, but the songs really stick with you.
Yes. Oh, yes. One song that's kind of like sticks with me. I don't even know why, but I was obsessed with this cartoon called Duckman. And it was just incredible. Jason Alexander was the voice of this, you know, foul-mouthed duck. And I remember it striking me as so wild as a kid because they weren't afraid to end episodes sad. And I had never seen that in a cartoon before. They would just end on a sad note with no sting, no, you know, little thing at the end. They would just truly let you sit in it. And when you're a kid, you're like, what the heck was that? And they had like not many, and Tim Curry was in it. There's not many musical numbers from that, but there was one song towards the end of the series, and a very specific chord progression, which I've stolen from so many times. I mean, it's like a very common one. The Beatles use it for Hard Day's Night, I think. But yeah, there's all sorts of like weird, random little things that. One of the things I find is that the stuff that inspires me is always just slightly wrong. I mean, like, it's not quite what I wish it was. And so that's where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like 90% of the way there. And I don't even know what there means, but it's always what drives me to make something that borrows from that thing. Where I'm like, oh, this is so close to me, but it's not me. This is the closest anyone's ever gotten to me. So it's like, that's the stuff that inspires me the most, but also kind of like enrages me the most.
Yeah, one of the ways that I can relate to you in all of this is one of the things that I try to do as a storyboard artist. There are certain shows where there is an opportunity to pitch music with the boards, and usually, it's not required of me, but I'll write a demo song and I'll either play it along with my boards, or I'll send it, you know, with the boards. And every once in a most of the time it's a wasted effort, and they're like, "No, we're gonna get a composer to do this." But every once in a while it works, and they're like, "I can't imagine this scene without that song. That's awesome." And then that's one of the few ways that animators or storyboard artists can get royalties is if they get a song in a show. So any chance I've pitched a song in Pickle and Peanut, I've pitched a song in Scooby Doo, I've pitched a song in Apple and Onion, in a bunch of different shows, and most of the time they don't make it.
Sure. Oh man, that's so cool. I'm so jealous of that though. I mean, that's kind of one of those things where we were talking about I come so late in everything that there would never be an opportunity for something like that with me. I mean, luckily I've got my own outlet, but yeah, totally jealous. I mean, even if you keep failing, just the idea of it's so cool.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you never know what could happen. You may run into a time where there was some sort of like stock song that they sing over in a part, and it's just not working for the timing. And late in the process, you're like, "Hey, I can fix this. Let me take an approach for the song." Before you have the composer like redo parts of the song or whatever you need to do, and potentially
I think
you could get a credit. I mean, it doesn't hurt to ask.
it's kind of tough in like WGA shows though, like American Dad and stuff, because it's so because like the way the writing is done. But I feel like like if you ever got a gig like at Cartoon Network, that might be possible because Cartoon Network is like very flexible with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, or Titmouse, or one of
Yeah.
those places where it always feels like there's certain, if it's a production where everybody is kind of getting their hands dirty,
The pipeline's
like
a
that
little
always,
looser, yeah.
yeah, that always like appealed to me. I was always kind of like, oh man, that looks cool. It's like closer to a clubhouse,
Yeah.
way more work,
Yeah.
but it's just like,
Yeah.
man,
And it's one of those things where like that it's sort of similar to like sometimes you get a scene to storyboard and you have a gag that you want to pitch, but it's going to take the scene on a little bit of a tangent. That I'm going to give my full to my full ability to this pitch. I know it's probably going to get cut, but if I don't pitch this joke or this idea, I'm gonna regret it. So you go all the way, and then it's probably a wasted effort, but every once in a while it pays off. And like one out of those 10
yeah.
times it works. And I had there's an Apple and Onion episode where I pitched a song, and the song got in. And I pitched two songs, and one of them didn't get in. But so there were two separate song sections. I pitched one song, I wrote the song, and it's a song about they're tossing a bottle back and forth, and they start making up tricks, and they try to do tricks like with this bottle, and they're like, bottle catch is our favorite game, and like and I just made like a kind of like a reggaeton like sort of sing song thing that they do. And even though a lot of the lyrics changed, the chorus remained the same, and I got credit with
Oh.
ASCAP, and I get royalties every once in a while for that song playing on TV. And it's one of those things where like, yeah, I've pitched many other songs that like did not make it in, and they were like, sorry dude, but every once in a while that one gets in, and you're like, oh man, it was worth it. It's worth trying to just throw myself out there and be vulnerable every once in a while.
That's so crazy.
That's
I feel
so
like,
cool.
do you guys, okay, that's a question for you guys, both of you. Do you like having a quieter job where you do a little bit less work, but you have more free time to work on your personal stuff? Or do you like being 100% invested in your job even if that might mean not that much free time to work on your own shit?
I don't think I've ever, I think I've, I don't know that I've ever worked on a job that required 100% to where it drained me. Apart from early on in the industry when it needed my full faculties to figure out and understand timing and to do it at a rate like to get close to full-time work. But because I never was a board artist, because I haven't like professionally directed, I've just always been the timing guy. And I just keep refining my craft. So it's not, I've never really had I hear all the time about people bummed out about how much of themselves it takes to put into someone else's project. And so like I can only hear that and I'm like, maybe I do have it good because I know my craft. I know timing inside and out. Our directors are phenomenal. The American Dad is boarded on model. Even when I have conversations with directors about fixing stuff, there's no ego involved because nobody's like, what do you mean? They're like, oh yeah, that's wrong. I'll get it fixed. So it's like, it's very frictionless and it's very in my wheelhouse. I know what I'm doing. And so I that's the only kind of thing that's the only version of professional work that I've had. Apart from, because I didn't go to college, everything before animation was all just, I worked at Walmart, I worked at Starbucks, I worked at The Gap, I worked at American Apparel. I worked at a call center, so I never had creative jobs. This is like my first time having a creative job. So I always kind of in the habit of there's work and your personal project, but you always have a personal project. I've never not had one my entire life. Like the moment I graduated high school, there was always my dream, what I'm doing for myself, and then what I'm doing for money, always.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I run into this thing that I've learned about myself where I recognize that if I stay up late working on, how do I phrase this? If I'm working on another show, usually the way usually the way that I function is I I end up putting my own work first and then cramming in the work on the show because I know that I can use how fast I can do it to get the work done. I
Yeah.
have this habit of putting extra into the show if I have too much time,
Mm.
just because of how I am.
Mhm.
So if I put my own work first and then I do work on the show and I cram it in, I end up doing the right amount of work for what the job should be
Dude,
getting
yes.
for what it's paying me for. And then I'm
Mm-hmm.
because if I do it the other way, I'm going to spend extra time doing shit that the show doesn't need because I'm like, oh, well, like it would be cool if I made this drawing beautiful. And then and then and then I'll get done late and then I'm like, oh, well, I don't have to do my work. There's no deadline, so I'll just like maybe I'll do it tomorrow. And
Mhm.
then I end up putting it off that
Yeah.
way. And it sounds shitty to say that out loud, but that's sort of how I work. I've recognized that anytime I'm on a show, I'm probably going to be putting my work first, and because I'm a professional, I always get my work on the show done because I know myself. But I'm gonna be I'm gonna be working on my stuff, which is why I've tried to make an extra push towards making my work my own stuff whenever I can.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. I've had so many it's so funny because I've wrestled with that with the not imposter syndrome, but I'll go through phases where I'm like, "Oh man, I'm doing a bad job." But that's just an internal feeling. Like I'm actually doing a really good job. It's just it's hard to explain. But yeah, when you approach stuff making it secondary, you first of all you save a lot of your mental health, because then you have no ego wrapped up in your day job, which is as it should be. Your ego is wrapped up in your failing personal
Mhm.
project, which is genius. But yeah, I do the exact same thing essentially, where I'm like, okay, if I wake up before I start work and I do this, I get my morning hours dedicated to my own project. That's when I'm like freshest or things like that. But I definitely, it's every once in a while I'll be like, I feel like I'm doing a bad job. And then I'll go back
Mm,
and double check my work, double check the work that I feel like guilty about. And I'm like, oh no, I nailed all of this. This is great. I just was in a negative
yeah.
mindset. It's
Well,
very, yeah, it's,
well, when you do it for long enough, you start realizing that you at 60% is still good enough for
mm-hmm.
that show. If you've been working for 10 years on a show or in this industry, you recognize that oh, I can hand in a piece of passable work that it's still inspired, it's still got the jokes. At the end of the day, the thing that takes the longest, which is the drawing part, I can bust out and it's passable, and it's fine, it's
Yeah.
fine and it works, and it like I yeah, I don't know, it's hard to get past that like proving yourself stage where like you give everything to your work, and it takes up all of your free time. But once you get
Mhm.
there, I mean, yeah, you should be able to find time for your own
I
art,
think
in my opinion. I think that's
it's
important.
so funny what you
Oh yeah.
said, Sean, because I literally had like a conversation like that recently where basically because like the learning curve is so real. Like also what you said, Shane, is that when you start at the beginning of your career, you have to like 100% of your time goes into the job because you're learning so much and you have to be on the same level as people who've been doing it for like a bunch of years. But then
Mm-hmm.
you kind of learn, or at least I kind of learned after that, that this was always the amount of time I needed to put in the job. And so it becomes very difficult because you're like, oh, I've in order to be at the level I need to like put in so much time. But then it's like you have to unlearn putting that amount of time, and then you have to learn being like, actually, I'm really good now, and the stuff that took me like I don't know 60 hours before, now I can just do it in 30 hours, and that's okay.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
difference between getting the job done and making a portfolio
Yeah.
piece to get yourself hired for your next job. And usually the way that I handle that is I'm like, okay, if there's a section of this board where I'm like, I want this to look beautiful. It'd be nice for that to be in my future demo reel or whatever. I'll do that, and then the rest will just be it'll be fine. I'll just make it fine and passable. But uh, being careful about where you put that condensed energy when you don't when it doesn't need to be there necessarily. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. That's another thing too, is I don't have a portfolio. You know, with timing is so obscure that I don't keep any of my timing from
Yeah.
previous shows, you know, and I've never, I mean, it sounds weird to say, but you usually don't interview for a timing position. It's usually reference based, and they just kind of have to trust that you know your stuff, because they can look at sheets and be like, I guess this is right.
Yeah. Most people
You know,
don't
and
know.
Yeah, I'm trying to
you make that
imagine.
blind call.
I'm trying to imagine
Yeah.
one of those like old fast like one of those physical portfolios with the clear sheets, and like you take it to a job fair and it's just all timing sheets, like just completely abstract. It just looks like sheet music. And they're
Yeah.
and
Well, yeah, and you know, and like, and studios kind of do, like, I've gotten job offers at the end of the first interview. They meet me and they're like, "Hey, would you like the position?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." You know, because you just kind of have to trust that you know your stuff, and that's part of also why I like to have my own project. Is it just proves, and also the characters are designed based on 2D timing. The eyes are flat, the mouths are just shapes that are popping on and off. So I'm just using like a 2D workflow in the 3D environment for all of the stuff that is important to Western animation, which is the eyes, the expression, the lip assignment, and some basic acting poses. But the time, having a project that shows that I know that I have a specific style of timing just kind of makes me feel more comfortable. It's like, that way you know what my timing style is. You know, it's very kind of like, I'm now very primetime influenced, for better or for worse. I just like things tighter and tighter, especially after watching, you know, other shows that are either overboarded or where the timing is just very flowy and very just like, oh, nothing's being held. You can't read any key poses. Like, you can see one of my pet peeves, I don't want to be too cynical because I hate being cynical, but one of my pet peeves is when you're watching like a cartoon and you just watch 6 keyframes go by in just like a blink, and none of them are held because the timer only has time to go from pose to pose to pose to pose with no held frames. But you're like, wow, there was like 6 boards in that little sequence. And you can tell when a keyframe is there, even when it's just an in-between, because you can tell, though, that was supposed to be held at some point. That was supposed to be held. You know, in the animatic, you could probably, the animatic was probably just all these keyframes popping, you know, pop, pop, pop.
That's yeah.
But that's all timing stuff.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Oh shoot! I was gonna ask something and I forgot. Something with animation, probably. No, yeah, Chugum. I wanted to ask something about Chugum, and I was just like, and yes, TikTok. Okay, I kind of want to talk about TikTok a little bit because that's kind of that's where you got big, and I kind of want to know what your relationship to TikTok is like. How did you start posting on it? What was your whole what's the whole story?
It was scary and it was weird. So I got on TikTok in like 2018, 2019, like right after it was called Musical.ly before that. But this was right after the brand change, and I was desperate to get eyes on what I was making because I've always, for whatever reason, I've always struggled to not just find an audience, but just to get views of the stuff that I'm making. You know, it's tough. And whatever platform I was using was just never working out. And so I installed TikTok on my phone in like 2019, I think, and on a whim. And it was so scary and confusing looking. And I just uploaded one of my cartoons, even though nobody was posting animation on there. This was back when it was all just people. But I was so desperate. I was like, I'm just going to like put a cartoon on here. And all of a sudden it got like 40,000 views. And I was like, holy cow, no one has ever seen that much of my animation before. And I was just learning Blender, and it was just like months in, and I made this little I'll post it on Twitter after the end of this so people can kind of see my progression. But I recorded some dialogue on my cell phone just saying, "Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you." And it was just, I animated a stick just saying that, a stick with a mouth to practice Blender. And it got 1 million views in 2019. And 1 million views in 2019, I'm like, oh my God, I should capitalize on this, because all of a sudden there's like tens of thousands of people following me.
With view inflation, considering view inflation in 2019.
I know.
The economics
it's nothing
of
now.
views.
TikTok is nothing. Like now, it's like, it used to be that 1 million views on a cartoon would get you like tens of thousands of followers, and now it's like not even.
Yeah, you used to get offered
most
a
of
show
my
back then for 1 million views.
I know. I watched so many animators blow past me in popularity. I'm just like, oh man, like why not? But it was, so I tried to capitalize on that by just making like a pink version of it with more elaborate eyes and then like a mouth. And then I tried voicing it with one of my mics instead of. But yeah, I tried to capitalize on that. I made like a pink stick with a mouth and eyes, and then that video also got like 1 million views. And so I just kept doing it. It started by practicing Blender and also by chasing views, which ended up biting me in the ass, because then when you're chasing trends and you're doing stuff just in hopes of gaining an audience, you never really get an audience.
Yeah.
But it was always twofold, because I was trying to learn something, so I didn't really put too much stock into it. But yeah, it was very interesting to be a part of. And then TikTok became. And then I would show my coworkers, and they'd be like, "Oh, cool, neat." Nobody had TikTok installed. Nobody knew what it was, So the fact that I was getting views was kind of like they were happy for me, but definitely didn't fully understand what was happening. And then it took years for TikTok to become, like, especially at the start of the pandemic. Well, not the start of the pandemic, but I feel like a year in is when it became just huge, just whatever it is now. And so I kind of got to ride on that, like a legacy creator on there.
Do you? I'm interested in kind of like all of what you're saying, also because I saw in a post that you made recently that you felt like it was kind of harder to get views now. Like, how do you feel that? Because I feel like your content has stayed exactly the same quality. You know what I mean? Like, not. I mean this in a positive way. Like, you haven't let your content quality go down. Like, you're still putting out something really, really good. And do you feel, I don't know, do you have any insights on the algorithm on the platform? Do you care about TikTok?
I care in the sense of I want to make something that gets seen, because I'm not a fine artist. I am far more, if between artist and entertainer, if that was a spectrum, I definitely feel like I lean more towards entertainer. So if I don't, if I'm playing to an empty room, there's only so many years of that you can take before you're like, well, what's the point? And being a songwriter before I was an animator, and like a failed kind of songwriter, after decades of just like little bits and pieces of hints of inspiration or people listening, you try to cling to it when you get it. But I have noticed, I mean, the stuff that I've been doing now is definitely not, it's very confusing. I don't know. It's if you make stuff that's formatted for TikTok, it might do well, but nothing will ever go beyond TikTok. So it's sort of a dead end, and it's not, no matter how many, so like I reposted that Danger Apple origin story, that cartoon that you posted on Twitter, and I reposted it 2 years after I made it, and it again got like 1.5 million views. And I posted it on Instagram 2 years later, and it got like 500,000. But everything else I post doesn't. So that's very much like, I'm almost like a micro version of a one-hit wonder, where that song resonated with people, but everything else,
so
it's
good, like, because I think you just kind of captured, like, I was wondering about that song, how you kind of like came about it, because it kind of captures the thing where like you have this wizard, and this wizard is almost kind of like is Chugum, and is like an allegory for like the artist, or like, like the entertainer, or like somebody who's like a special talent or skill, and they end up being used by the king for nefarious purposes, and the king can be like an allegory or a metaphor for like, you know, the capitalism. And I think a lot of people are just kind of seeing that. They're like they can feel it. And you have like this really I don't know, you wrote this line and I'm like, damn, that's like, I don't know, that's clever. Like when he the king goes just so that they
Yeah,
don't
it's like, oh yeah.
so that they can't tell.
Yeah, so that they're not hungry, so that they can't
Yeah,
tell.
and
Well, what are you
that's so
implying?
good. That's like, I think that's like, oh fuck, I watched that video and I got that chill. Like, god damn it, you know, you put into words a feeling that a lot of people can feel in this like late stage capitalism kind of.
That is definitely, you know, I never start with a theme or ulterior motive, because that would, you know, it would be too preachy. It definitely was never meant to be anything like that other than something silly. But then I let the lyrics kind of like guide me through the story. And honestly, that was also an exercise in and of itself, because like I was saying, I've read every songwriting book in existence, but I have my own rhyming dictionary that I wrote. Like every word in the English language, I rewrote into a personalized rhyming dictionary based on the songs that I would like to sing versus songs that I would never sing, even though they rhyme.
Wow.
Interesting.
It's just a very quick way for me to know that every single word I'm looking at in this rhyming dictionary, organized by letter, is just words that I know I'd feel comfortable singing. Like simple example is like the word scarf. I'll never want to sing the word scarf, even though it rhymes with barf. It just doesn't, I just have no use for it. So I'll never want to sing it. So I just omit it from my rhyming dictionary. So I never even have to look at it. It's like, you know, it's just like, I don't need it. I don't need that word.
It's like that thing in Sherlock where he like doesn't know the planets' names because he's like, why would I need to know the planets' names? There's not any murders about planets, but he's like a genius about everything else. That's very interesting that you just have a gut feeling about like scarf. I would never write a thing about scarf. Like,
well, it's also the way it sounds in my mouth, you know, and the way the timbre of my voice is. You know, there's so many songwriters, especially from like the 40s and 50s, who talk about how you can't use certain words because the stressed vowel is just like too weak or something like that. You know, they have their own version of these weird rules that guide you. And I love restrictions like that. But with this song, the Danger Apple origin story song, I had just updated my rhyming dictionary to include feminine rhymes, which is the like where the rhyme is on the secondary stressed vowel, which is instead of the primary one. So the song ends on, what are you implying? Make them so happy they don't know they're dying. And that was the first time I'd included, I was just a thought exercise or an exercise in how to start incorporating feminine rhymes into my songwriting, because before then it was all like masculine. And I'm just saying masculine and feminine because that's what they're called in like, you know, books. Like the stressed syllables, the secondary stress rhyming is considered feminine.
So
or whatever,
is that like to you that's like getting into like your own like personal like theory building and like world building of your own song structure? That's almost like an offshoot separate part of a hobby from songwriting. I mean, I know it's within songwriting and it suits your world, but do you have other little like hobby sort of things that you split off from that we don't know about, that like, because that's a very interesting, I've never known anybody that's rewritten a rhyming dictionary to try to like that sounds like the kind of tangent that like a lot of people take when they're like, okay, I'm gonna write a cartoon. Oh, but before I write this cartoon, I have to create this whole world about this. You know, they're drinking a Coke bottle, but I don't want it to be Coke. I want it to be this whole backstory behind this Coke, this new version of Coke that is, you know, this own world that I create, and then like they get back to their story a week later, like because they've gone on this tangent, you know.
Well, I mean, yeah, a lot of that kind of comes from the fact that I came to animation late in life. Like I wasn't a professional animator until I was 30, you know, so I had all of my 20s to like this whole other world. I like programming. It started out as game dev because of Unreal Engine, because Unreal Engine is, you know, it's a game engine. But using it for animation, you can't help but learn game dev, which made me want to start learning programming and coding. And so I've done like a fair bit of coding and learning to code and trying to learn how to code. When I first moved to New York, I gave like a live coding performance. There's this thing called live coding, which is where you code music live on stage, naturally, and it's software that is code driven, but it'll generate music dynamically, and you can choose the notes, the rhythms, the drums, and all of this stuff. And there's actually there's a post of it what I created on Instagram, but I was like coding that music live.
How,
And so
do you feel like that's a little? Would you draw a parallel with like DJing, or is that a completely different thing?
it's similar. It can be similar, because a lot of the music that comes out of coding is very techno-y sounding.
What are those
But you are
what
creating
are those synths that people build where they build a wall of synths and it generates like walls of sequential sounds and arpeggios. I'm trying to remember what that's called. It reminds me of a coding version of that.
It's very much like that. You can totally, yeah, if you want to create an arpeggio, you would code like an array, and then have the array cycle through a scale, like a C scale, but then you would choose like C major or C Lydian or something.
Have you thought of because I've never seen this. Have you thought of live streaming something like that? I don't know if you still dabble in that at all, but that's very interesting.
Was kind of what ended up happening was that I ended up writing a narrative, and if you where the music was the background to a short story that I narrated, and it was a parody of Frog and Toad. And I actually had Frog and Toad kind of like, I used like the chewing gum voices for it because I didn't really, I'm not a voice actor, but
You keep
what
saying
I learned from
But-
that, but we created like little pamphlets, little short stories of these Frog and Toad parodies, and passed them around to the audience and had the audience follow along as I read through with the coded music. So the takeaway wasn't really to pursue more live coded music, so more than it was that everything I kind of dabble with, I always try to inject a narrative. So it's like my takeaway wasn't, it's like I love code. Part of the reason why I even enjoy game dev at all isn't the idea of making like a fun game. It's free story time, if that makes sense. Like
It's a means to an end
a-
for telling,
Yeah.
focusing on the thing that you want to be doing,
yeah.
which is story, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. But because it's like a 2-minute cartoon could be a 30-minute game with 30-second cutscenes sprinkled throughout it. And you're creating like a whole new level of. So that was kind of my takeaway from it.
Is your
like.
sorry? Oh, sorry. No. Continue.
Oh no, that was it.
Oh no, I was just gonna ask: is your rhyming dictionary a program that you made?
Oh no, it's written. It was originally my first version was written by hand on notebook paper that I just stapled together by letter. The latest version was written in Excel and then printed out. I lost the Excel files, so my second edition is like the only hard copy I have, and it's all beat up. But if I lost it, I'd be very sad. But yeah, no, it was all done by hand. I bought like basically every rhyming dictionary that I could find that existed, and kind of synthesized them, and then pulled away what I didn't want
So cool.
from all of them.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I feel like, that's so cool. I don't know. I think, I don't know. It's just really interesting the way you think about things and the way you kind of like create these tools for yourself. Because I feel like at the end of the day, that's a huge part of creating as well. Like finding a pipeline and a tool and something that works for you.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah,
like
creating your
learning
own
different. It's like you're learning different instruments each time you are learning. You're learning a different instrument to tell your story, whether it's an actual instrument or whether it's coding or whether it's Blender or whether it's Unreal or whether it's TikTok or that's interesting.
It's true. And, it's like you also have to kind of pick which instruments not to learn because they're too similar to ones you already play. Like, if you want to learn guitar, the next phase, learning banjo, isn't really going to be as helpful as learning harmonica, because guitar and harmonica complement each other better than, well, I mean, it's subjective, but you pick and choose what you want to learn. And I feel like it's so funny, V, you were saying, I don't know, 2 hours ago, that by the time you were learning Blender, everybody was raving about Unreal Engine. And when I got into Unreal Engine, I was like, this is it. This is my last big thing that I'm capable of learning. And I don't know about you guys, but like, I feel like as I get older, it gets harder and harder to learn. And I feel like I don't know if I have the energy. Like this, I'm so grateful that I know enough, as much 3D as I do now, because I feel like I don't have to worry about learning it ever again. Like I know enough, about modeling and
Yeah.
texturing and normals and vertices, and I'm like, okay, cool, and rigging.
I think it's all a function of time for me. I feel it's just like, honestly, that's kind of
Yeah.
because I mean, I love storyboarding and I love this job, but oh god damn it, it's so time consuming. And it's like when I storyboard, I can't do anything else except like watch a documentary or listen to music or like, but I can't when I storyboard, it just takes so much time. And I mean, I've been like writing a lot more and I love writing because I can't be like writing when I'm like walking around. I can do other stuff. I can be like unloading the dishwasher or anything, but I can't listen to a documentary, so I can't keep learning while I'm writing. So there's a little bit of that time
Yes.
is so limited with these crafts.
Well, I think there's a difference in between learning for like being able to get your next job and learning for what you want your creative process to be. And for me, like I've stumbled for the most part across a way that I function making shorts with certain programs that I like, and I'm like, if it's not broke, I don't need to fix it. But I recognize that it's possible that there'll be a job that comes up where I'm like, okay, I need to learn this other program, and that feels different than changing my whole creative process for no reason to learn some new thing.
If it's for you, like I posted on Twitter, like I built a Harmony rig and made a whole cartoon in Harmony using like a rig-based system. And I didn't do that for a job. I've never worked on a Harmony-based show. I mean, I use Harmony. Bento Box uses Harmony for their timing for their shows, but they're still traditionally animated shows. But my initial reason for learning Harmony, especially rigging, was like, hey, what if I get a job, on like a rig-based show? I can use my timing skills and my rig building skills. But I ended up just not enjoying the workflow enough to keep making my own stuff in that. And then I fell back on Blender and fell back on 3D. But I think if I had just tried to, so I've tried multitasking to learn something. But the moment I realized it wasn't something I actually cared that much about, I just didn't keep up with my skills in it. Because it's like, what's the point of like trying to keep abreast of projects or work or software that potentially could lead to a job if you're not that passionate about it?
Yeah.
I think it's like, yeah, I do think 3D is just so cool though, because it's just so versatile. Like you can see people like, like we're the kids or like you and you guys can like do like full little, I mean, I don't know. I see the finished short and I'm like, this is so awesome. I wish I could do this. Oh, and it looks like it was easy to do, but you probably spend a million hours on it.
Oh yeah, I mean, and like I've had the last episode I made is technically the last episode if the Kickstarter doesn't get funded, because I've been only sleeping 6 days a week since I started the Kickstarter, because it requires a full all-nighter 1 day a week to be able to make these cartoons and have a full-time job. And I would be willing to go through that if the audience was there, and the support was there. But I was like, okay, I can't keep doing this for 800 views on YouTube. Like I can't just be like, oh, I'm not going to sleep every Saturday for the next like
No, it takes a toll on you.
too
Yeah.
And
much.
it's really, I'm so glad that you brought up the Kickstarter again, because I did want to talk about the Kickstarter and what it's like kickstarting an indie project. By the way, anybody who's listening right now, Shane's Kickstarter is still going. Make sure to check it out. It's in the replies of the this live event. But yeah, because so tell us a little bit how much planning you do before starting the Kickstarter and how much work it is on a weekly basis to maintain the Kickstarter.
So I don't, it's different if it involved lots of people, but because it's just me with my partner helping out with a lot of stuff, we went piecemeal with it. We went in knowing it was kind of, well, we went in not knowing it was going to fail, but we went in telling ourselves that it would fail and that it was like a doomed from the start. And that kind of helps keep the pressure off. You're not stressed about it because you're like, this is going to fail no matter what. Which, side note, when it does fail, even if you're planning on it, it still bums you out. So it doesn't save you any emotional, terror. But so we went in very casually. We just studied a lot of other Kickstarters to see what they were doing and what they were offering, and what I was capable of offering people as far as like rewards go, because I didn't want to end up in a situation where the Kickstarter was all about making content that had nothing to do with the cartoon as rewards for just cartoon being created. Because I was like, the point of this was so that I could spend my hiatus, because you guys know that you usually only work on a show for like 9 months out of the year, 10 months out of the year, and then you either go on unemployment or you find another job. And I was like, if I could make enough money to survive a hiatus and dedicate all this time just to this, perfect. But I didn't want to overpromise anything beyond like digital sort of stuff. So it wasn't that time consuming. It was stressful though. A lot of back and forth of making it look good and making it look professional. And we set a date for it, like a pre-launch date. And during that pre-launch date, there was like people from Indiegogo who contacted us trying to poach us for their website. And they made a lot of promises. We actually had like a Zoom meeting with Indiegogo, and they were like, hey, we'll do this for you. We'll do this for you if you take it down. And I was like, looking at Indiegogo's website, I just didn't care for it, the way it looked. And it was impossible to navigate to failed projects. Whereas on Kickstarter, Chew Gum will be on there forever. And people will always get to see that it was labeled a project we love. They'll always get to see how much funding we raised. And they'll always get to watch the episodes that were created through the campaign. So it's like, it's there. Even if it fails, it'll look cool. So that was kind of... So honestly, I mean, it was not that I went in with it half-assing it, but I just went in casually because maybe I'll do it again someday. But when you do that, it's... Yeah, I don't know. It just was... Does that answer it? I feel like I lost the thread a little bit. I'm staring
how do you
at this
think about
version
your rewards? Because I'm assuming that you're not doing a like okay, if you subscribe to the Patreon, it'll be like, buy two trash cans to separate the shit from the shit. Thank you, Naruto fan 69, and it's like it's in their name is in the short.
There's a tier where you would definitely be credited as like a thank you, and then there's like a producer tier and stuff like that. I have no problem crediting people at the end of each episode. And there totally was a tier of a songwriting collaboration and being able to be a voice in an episode.
Oh, nice.
Where we would work back and forth. Yeah, we kind of like it was such a high amount. It was like $700 or something. But I was like, if somebody really wants to invest that much money into like the project and believes in it, they should be allowed to have some fun with me. We can chat about it and collaborate a bit. And, if they have a song idea, I'll do it. Like, what do I care? Like, it's easy. There's so many silly crap songs. That's kind of part of the premise of the show. It's just how many absurd songs there are. Like it vacillates between real songs and joke songs. So like there was a song about giving up and failing. And then the song before that was a song about little ghosts eating through the sheet hole. It's just about a ghost not being able to eat food because it didn't have a hole in the mouth for the sheet. And so the chorus is just a little ghost eating through the sheet hole. So I'm not like, I'm controlling in a sense, but not so controlling that I wouldn't create rewards where people could totally be involved, totally shout out their family if they really wanted to. I just didn't want to do physical objects.
Sure.
I wanted I wanted everything to be kind of focused on the fact that people cared about the cartoon being made. So that was
that makes a lot of sense. I feel like sometimes promising physical rewards is really, really, really hard because it's costly. It takes time, and So I think going full digital is really smart. I wonder if, like, can you tell us a little bit about how you approached the advertising of it all? Because I mean, I'm asking also because with my webcomic, I do feel like I have to advertise like my Ko-fi and like all of these different things that I'm doing on the side, just to tell people, hey, if you enjoy my content, please um consider supporting me so then I can make more of the content for you. By the way, yeah.
So, yeah, part of it was, and I guess I got some criticism for this, but part of it was taking like a short episode that I had just created, breaking it up into parts, and then having like an overlay advertising the Kickstarter over the end of like some dialogue on some clips that were like formatted vertically for TikTok and Instagram and things like that. And I tried. I wish I had the strength and the wherewithal to do this all the time, but there was a couple of shorts where I actually filmed them vertically and in HD, two of them specifically, so that they were formatted for Reels or TikToks. While I had, adjusting the composition for the different camera resolution without, showing the boundaries of the world and stuff like that, which is a lot of effort because you're like basically kind of directing something twice and then re-rendering it twice. And so I tried that, but there wasn't any like marketing. It was more just part of the reason why it's failing, I think, or is going to fail or whatever is the fact that I kind of just kept making episodes, hoping that if I made more episodes, people would watch it and be like, oh, this is what it is. This is where it's heading. I want to keep seeing where it's heading. As opposed to trying any kind of marketing gimmicks or any kind of pleading. It's not the way to go because it's not working out. But this is such a learning process that I'm so burnt out on failure, but I am very, very proud to have this failure under my belt. Like I.
No, but I mean, it's
once
like,
this is.
I appreciate you being so candid about it and like talking like about what it's like having Kickstarter and like the kind of, because I think, like we all kind of think about doing it at some point, like, obviously, because, when you're a passionate creator, you're like, I wish I could just have more time to work on my project. So that makes a lot of sense. And no, I think it's just really, really interesting because there's like all of these different aspects that go into it. By the way,
and then there's
like,
the emotional aspect of like dealing with like if I mean and this isn't even necessarily just for like the Patreon or Kickstarter route. This is like when you make something and post it online and it doesn't go viral or whatever. Like every time you do that,
Right.
there's a small there's like a talking yourself down that happens within you every time. That's
Oh,
like, oh, it'll be
yeah.
the next one. Oh, like it's not necessarily me. Maybe it was just a bad day to post it. Oh, like maybe it just didn't get caught by the algorithm and swept up. Like who knows? Maybe it's
Oh,
out of my
yeah.
control. You know?
It's such a nightmare. I remember one time I posted a video where I was like, it didn't go anywhere, and I was like, oh, I added too much reverb on the dialogue.
Yeah, and that's
I'm
why.
gonna,
Yeah,
like,
that's why. Yeah.
No. Here's what's crazy. No. That's what's so messed up was that I turned like the reverb down, then reposted it. I was like, it's failing anyway, and then it got over 1 million views, and I was like, did I do something or did I not do something? Like, was that me or not? And it is tough. It is tough because when stuff doesn't get watched, you feel like it's people not resonating with you, with who you are. And you're like, "Oh shit, people don't like me. They don't like what I have to say, not enough to actually watch or go somewhere and see it." And so it's like it's so funny, not to get too real, but there's a time where I was worried that I was sort of like bipolar, had like these mental issues because you go from these insane highs to these incredible lows every single project, and no matter how removed you are from the project, no matter how small the project is, you're like, I'm just gonna make this is just for fun, it's gonna fail, I'm gonna move on. And then you still go through the emotional roller coaster even when you don't intend to. And it wasn't until I heard I was just gonna say, like, before you, was the moment I heard other people talking about this insane emotional roller coaster that they couldn't control, I was like, okay, I'm not crazy. It's just a creative
Yeah,
person thing.
100%. Yeah, I was gonna say like definitely not crazy, but just because I relate to what you're saying, it's like I think I don't know. I feel like I don't know. If you're a creator and you're posting online, you probably love emotional chaos. There is a part of you
What
that's
he's trying to say is
know.
we're all mentally ill, and you are crazy, but we're mentally ill together, and we all have issues, and that's okay.
I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
just saying because
No,
what
I'm just messing. I'm messing.
wait, yeah, you I know you are, but I think there's a part of truth to it, and I think it's kind of nice to be talking about it because I don't know, like why else are we doing it? You know what I mean? It's like I mean we do it because we love it, but like you said, Shane, and I think you said something that's very very important, very true, and something that I really resonate with is that I don't identify with a high like fine artist, you know. I identify with an entertainer, and I
Yeah.
want people to read or watch or listen to what I'm doing because else it might as well not exist. It's like I'm doing it for others also.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. For sure.
So yeah, it's yeah. I think that's really cool. That's really interesting. Um yep. We're hashing it out on creative block, everybody.
No, it's good, and the thing about like we're talking about like feeling, like whether or not your Kickstarter goes through. Like I already like the mindset that you have that like you did something, and if it is a, like what other people might describe as a failure, like, and that could happen to anybody. Like it's still something that you tried and that you learned from, and if you do again, maybe you know a different route to go. Or I mean, we've all taken big hits in the industry, especially putting ourselves out there, pitching projects. Like the V and I both know a very similar feeling to this kind of thing happening, whether it goes through or not. But the thing that you can look at is, like right now, there's 137 people that have given money to your project, and that's nothing to that's nothing to sneeze
Yeah.
at. That's fucking sick. And whether or not it
Yeah.
goes all the way through or not, that's not nothing. That's a cool
Yeah.
thing.
It is. Yeah. No, totally. I hopefully I didn't come across as
No,
ungrateful
no,
because
way.
it's
No, you
so
didn't. No.
because it's so exciting, and it's so this is the most connection I've ever felt to other people while creating my own thing. Like it just like a video getting 1 million views doesn't create like the same connection that I feel now with this project. So even if you could arguably on paper say that Chew Gum is like the least quote unquote popular thing I've ever put online, it's the closest I've ever felt to the people who are watching it. And I'm like, oh, this is closer to what I was looking for. This is definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like if, because with something like this, it's very possible that the idea in some other packaged format would have a completely different effect. I mean, like the difference in between posting a a video on TikTok that's like a 3-minute video versus trying to figure out a way to separate all those gags and make each one a 15-second video that's like very short and easy to digest. Like those, the way that those are approached or seen by that social media may be like worlds apart, and you never know, like, what you could try the next time and learn from through this process. So I'm either way, I'm proud of you for putting yourself out there. If you guys are listening, the Kickstarter is not over yet.
Yeah.
There's still
Yeah.
time. There's still time to give if you dig Shane and you dig the vibe of the project. There's awesome animations on the Kickstarter, and you know it's fun to help someone live out dream of making things full time, and we at Creative Block support that because
Yeah.
we do that too.
We do that too. And it's like, and sometimes it's like if you don't have money, that's not a problem. You can always support creators by interacting with their content. Easy ways to interact with their content is
Mm-hmm.
You can share, you can like,
share and
comment.
like, and comments go
Yeah.
such a long way. It's not just for the algorithm, but it's really for the creator. Like somebody taking like a couple like seconds to type out a comment on something you created, it's like it's so nice. As a creator, it's like it almost
It feels good.
yeah, it feels almost better than money.
Oh yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
DMs too. I've never gotten a DM that I haven't replied to. So because people don't DM because they think everyone's getting slammed with DMs, but I'm not. Direct message me. Say something. Say that it resonates with you. I never hear it enough. Do it. It's never a bother. It never feels
Yeah.
weird. It's always awesome.
Like people caring about like showing that you care about the
Yeah.
art goes such a long way. Do you guys want to I think this is
Yeah.
maybe the end of this creative block.
Well, we went for a long time.
Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
really gone over what we normally go, but I think that sometimes when we do the live format, when you go longer, it gives more people a chance to hop in, and I'm happy to do it.
That's true. Oh, me too. I'm so glad you guys did this and reached out to me. You guys are so cool. This is like I never get to talk about high level creative projects and stuff like with other people who are working on equally massive like personal projects. So it's it's just really awesome. You guys are
Thanks.
so cool.
I love talking about
you.
creating. It's fun.
Yeah.
And it creates
Yeah.
that sense of community, and that sometimes it can be you're on your own and you're doing your stuff all by yourself, and it's nice to know that you're not alone.
And for those of you that are listening that maybe missed the first part was super interesting, and we went through drawing a bunch of poses, and Shane labeled the way that that he would label on American Dad the timing sheets for how to time the poses and the lip sync, and there's a super amazing insightful section at the beginning that this episode eventually is going to be edited. And where's it gonna be?
It's going to be on YouTube. So we're going to release this episode of Creative Block with Shane Curry on YouTube. This is probably going to be a couple months from now. But in the meantime, check out our YouTube channel. We have over 100 episodes where we talk with animation professionals, from showrunner to color designer to writers, anything any craft basically. So definitely encourage all of y'all on the Twitter space to check out our YouTube channel. Obviously, follow Sean, Shane, and myself, as well as Creative Block on Twitter. And because we do the Creative Block Twitter, we ask for creative prompts and drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests for the future episodes, because we do record an episode once a week. We release an episode once a week. And we couldn't do that without our amazing editor Clemens. She makes us sound smarter than we actually are, and she makes the episodes shorter than they need to than they are when we record them. And amazing.
Yeah, you know how video adds 10 pounds? Audio, after ran through by Clem, I'm an athlete when by audio standards. After she gets done with it. Oh, I do have one final question for you, and I can't believe that we didn't ask it because it's the name of the show.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
How, when you're stumped and you don't know what to write, if you're feeling like a big dum-dum, if you're like I forget how to sing, whatever, what do you do to get past creative block?
Oh, this is such a cool one. So, I get past creative block by not being creative at all. Like, what I end up doing is I kind of have like this emotional breakdown where I just tell myself that I'm giving up on whatever I'm working on. Like I try to treat it as real as possible, as if I'm truly giving up, walking away from the project. And even if because I've quote unquote given up on everything I've ever tried, but then I always go back and nobody knows that I gave up because it was all secretly internal. But I go through that turmoil. Then I go through an education phase where I just tell myself that I'm going to spend the next half a year of my life learning something. And so I'll pick a subject. Usually it's related to what I'm doing. You know, it's like game dev or coding or anything. And I'll start with YouTube videos, then I'll buy like some used books on Amazon. And sometimes I'll go through like weeks of just forcing myself, like, oh, fairy tales. Last time I had a huge creative block, I decided I was going to study fairy tales. So I got books on fairy tales from every culture, like Russian, Japanese, Chinese, Irish, and then books on fairy tale theory by like students of Jung and things like that. And I just went through this crazy period of studying. And then by the time I'm done, I'm so burnt out on whatever it is I'm studying that I'm desperate to create stuff again.
Well, I will say you have the longest term creative block process I think we've ever heard about on the show. It's a creative block strategy marathon where you take a break from your project for like a full year and buy multiple books and get into new programs and then come back. Most people give an answer like, yeah, I step away for like a day and like I get some fresh air.
Well, so to be fair, this is all happening. A lot of it's happening in my mind. I make it dramatic so that I truly feel like I'm capable of walking away from it.
So you live a year? You live a year in your mind, stepping away, and then you come back?
In a way, I go through the emotional turmoil. It's very much like a breakup. I let myself go through the emotional turmoil of giving up. I just don't tell anyone because it's very dramatic, and I always end up, reneging or whatever and going back and trying again. But I definitely take it as seriously as possible, as if I'm like, I'm done, I'm out, I'm never doing this again. And then my brain doesn't realize like, oh, what if he's serious? And then it pulls me back in. So it doesn't take a year.
I just
but
imagine
I commit to a year.
Like every time you're like trying to write a song and you can't think of a chord, you just like you whisper your guitar and you're like, goodbye. And you set your guitar down and like emotional music comes and one tear falls and you like climb out the window and you're like, I have a journey to go on. And then like you come back like at the end of the day and you've like grown your beard out and it's a year has passed and you pick it up and you're like, hello again, my old sweet friend.
Well, I come back. What I come back with is my own rhyming dictionary. So I really think about it. I am doing this stuff. I really, you joke, but I really am. I wasn't writing songs while writing the rhyming dictionary. You can't do both. Yeah. So I mean, you joke, but I am. Yeah,
no, that's amazing.
It's totally.
No, that's really cool. No, I love that. I love that you go through a study phase because I feel like we have never heard that answer before, and I think it's like, I don't know, studying is really inspiring, and I think it does kind of counteract creative block to someone.
I do feel so fortunate that you didn't get stumped in this interview, and you just like whisper into the phone like. And like you walk away, a single tear falls down. We hear like distant sad music, and we're like, no, hey, hold on, wait, come back, we can move on, we can ask a different question. Like, no, this is a mini breakup, stumped, and you like walk away. No.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So fun. No, that was so fun. That was so fun. Yeah.
I'll help you transition if you want.
Yeah,
Would you like my transition?
This is anybody who's like listening, this is my character trait now. I tried to work on it, but I'm terrible at segues, and
Wait, this is the end of me? Wait, I'll help you in dragging this out, because I won't exist after this episode. I'll be gone.
You only exist within this audio and within this Twitter space. You're trapped in this Twitter space forever!
Wow. Please don't end this. Please.
So in the same way that Shane gets stumped, kisses his guitar or his computer goodbye, and says farewell when he hits creative block, it is time for us to break up with you, audience.
Oh my God.
Until the next time,
I don't
mwah,
exist outside
I
of
give you a
this.
small kiss on the
No.
forehead,
Oh my
and we
god,
have to
why?
end this particular creative block. It's not you,
Don't end
it's
me.
me.
Yeah, but I won't. There will be no me.
This is
Oh
so
my
dramatic.
God.
Chew gum. I'm so sorry.
And this is the end of our creative block. Shane, thanks for
Yeah.
being a guest and sharing our story, and thanks to our listeners.
Yeah.
Follow us on Twitter
Yeah.
at CRTV Block, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. Huge thank you to our editor Clements for editing the podcast, and Marco for helping us produce the show. And shout out to, I think, the most people that we've had watch one of our Twitter spaces. We want to keep doing this every once in a while. I think it's a new, fresh way to change it up, and we thank you guys so much for hanging out and giving us your time, lending Shane your ears, and
Yeah.
trusting that he'll give them back to you someday.
Never. Ears on a necklace. I got a collection. Yeah.
If you
awesome.
love our show, support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews as well as bonus episode. Click the link in the description of this episode. And just consider interacting with our content. Hit that subscribe button, like, comment, all of these different things. You don't have to have money to support us. I've been your host, V.
And I was Sean. I write songs too, just like Shane. Keep being creative, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.